That's all from me. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours, but time is ticking. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, hello and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's 3 o'clock and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours is former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan and also political commentator Lee Harris. Coming up in the next few hours, police forces across the UK are expected to be on standby again this weekend amid reported protests across the UK. So how safe do you feel on the streets? And now the police say they will continue their zero tolerance for knife crime following a fatal stabbing in Luton. Is it time the thugs give up their weapons? Then in the Pulse, UK doctors are on high alert over a deadly spread of Mpox. But before we get stuck into that, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 3 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your top story this hour, 125 firefighters are battling a blaze at London's iconic Somerset House. Smoke was spotted billowing from the roof of the historic building on the Strand just before midday. 15 fire engines have now been sent to the scene. Crews have confirmed they're tackling a fire located in part of the building's roof. The cause of the fire is still unknown, though. Somerset House, now an arts venue, had been set to host a breakdancing event this afternoon. In Scotland, a member of the SNP has been kicked out of the party for comments about the Israel-Hamas war, described as utterly abhorrent. John Mason's been accused of flippantly dismissing the deaths of more than 40,000 Palestinians. Party officials will now meet to discuss a fixed time period of suspension. Greater Manchester Police have launched a murder investigation after a man who became trapped in a burning building died in hospital. Officers were called to a fire on Dumbarton Green in Wigan early on Wednesday morning. It's being treated as a suspected arson attack. In other news, it's reported the former newsreader Hugh Edwards is now accused of sexually assaulting a 27-year-old man in a West End club after sending explicit text messages. This follows earlier revelations that the 62-year-old admitted receiving child sex images and videos. The alleged victim claims Edwards, who continued despite being asked to stop, was brazenly aggressive and got off on the risk of getting caught. It's also alleged in the Daily Mail and the Sun newspaper the former BBC star threatened to kill anyone who looked at the man, whom he described as his possession. Police across the country are on high alert today as protests and counter-protests take place nationwide. It follows the arrest of 460 people so far, linked to violent disorder earlier this month, with hundreds now facing court. Tensions are expected to be high in Birmingham, with the group Stand Up to Racism also taking to the streets. Meanwhile, our reporter Ray Addison has been speaking to protesters in Dover.
They're calling me a racist and they're calling me a fascist and a Nazi. I'm just British. In my country, holding my Union Jack, looking out for my children and grandchildren, whom I've got 3 of.
I love my country and I want our future, our kids to have something to, have something, When they grow up, I don't want them to inherit something that's, it'll be dangerous for them in the future. They'll have no facilities to use, they don't get a doctor's appointment.
I've come down here just really so I can actually see what the reaction is. There must be 50 police here now protecting 4 of us. It's because they want to attack us, and yet we're the ones that are being called the aggressors. We're the ones that are being called the fascists and the racists.
In Ireland, a teenage boy's now been charged over a stabbing outside Renmore Barracks. Army chaplain Father Paul Murphy posted on social media to say he was doing OK after receiving treatment for serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The child, whose age isn't known, is due in court later. A private funeral for one of the 3 young girls stabbed to death in Southport is taking place today. 6-year-old BB King was attacked during a dance class at the end of last month. The killing sparked anti-immigration and counter-protests across the UK, in part because of misinformation about the suspect. Now, the government is being warned it will have to increase funding to meet its pledge to end the so-called 8 a.m. scramble for GP appointments. The Doctors' Association claims at least £35 more per patient per year is needed to match funding levels from a decade ago. During the election campaign, Labour said it would make it easier to book appointments. In Gaza, it's reported at least 18 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike. Hours earlier, President Joe Biden had claimed he was optimistic a ceasefire deal with Hamas was closer than it's ever been. Following negotiations with mediators in Qatar, Joe Biden told reporters there are just a couple of issues standing in the way of an agreement, which could lead to hostages being freed.
I'm optimistic, not far from over. Just a couple more issues, I think we got a shot.
Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's just coming up to 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. On the way, police forces across the UK are expected to be on standby this weekend amid reported protests, along with planned gatherings by campaign groups, including Stand Up to Racism. We'll be going live to Birmingham to get the latest. Harry and Meghan, security and the use of bulletproof ballistic briefcases to protect the couple from potential shooters in Colombia. But the UK were too dangerous for them, wasn't it? Crikey, seriously. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do the government need a different approach to tackle protests? As nearly 500 people have been arrested since the unrest swept the nation. And then, how safe do you feel on our streets? As police have said that they will continue their zero tolerance for knife crime and will pay thugs to surrender their weapons before the ban kicks in next month. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments at gbnews.com/your say. So, of course, let's start with the big stories of the day. Police forces are on high alert amid planned protests and gatherings across the country. Anti-immigration protests took place in Dover earlier, and it's still kicking off in Birmingham. And whilst campaign groups Stand Up to Racism are taking to the streets, all of this comes as new data reveals that 460 people have been arrested in connection with violent disorder earlier this month, although that's not to say what side they've been arrested from. And hundreds face their day in court. So joining me now is GB News West Midlands reporter Jack Carson. Jack, so you are live. Where are you and what can you tell me is happening?
Well, the Stand Up to Racism protest that has been here for the last couple of hours has quite literally just finished not long ago. Those protesters have just gone home, and you talked just there about the police being on high alert. West Midlands Police had said yesterday, putting out a statement, that they were going to have an increased presence within the city centre here because of the rumoured protests that could well be happening in the city online. They're referring there to anti-immigration protests that had been rumoured online. We've not seen any evidence of that happening here today, certainly here in Birmingham. We did have the Stand Up to Racism protest. There was quite a couple of hundred people, I would say, that gathered there to listen to speeches, listen to people chanting and listen to some poetry as well. Different placards there that we could see, some like bigots out of Brum and kind of standing up to fascism. Lots of talk from some of the speakers on stage about Nigel Farage and talk about the rise of the far right and Reform UK getting seats in Parliament at the election, wanting to stand up against that kind of rise of those, certainly that party in particular. But West Midlands Police did have quite a few police vehicles here as well, quite a few officers, police liaison officers that had liaised already as the protesters arrived, talked to them, negotiated the plan of what was to happen, and it was a very peaceful protest. It's been very busy anyway here because it is, Saturday, right in the middle of everyone trying to do their shopping, and they certainly made their voices clear at the protest, but there were no violence or any trouble, certainly that we've seen as we've been observing the protest here. But we did speak to one of the people that had spoke on stage to the crowd, Abu Maima. He's a youth worker in this city. He spoke to us a little bit earlier on.
The fact that I can't be a Muslim and walk in public and feel safe, that is what's worrying, and that's what upsets me more than anything. There's a lot of people who are here trying to defend immigration, trying to defend refugee rights, but for me it's more about my identity, and if I can't be who I am in public, then that's where it is concerning.
Yeah, so there's the view there, really, about why these people felt like they had to come out and protest today, why they had to feel like they had to stand up to racism. They don't necessarily feel like they are safe with the violence that we've seen across the country in the past few weeks. You were mentioning, Nana, the data that we've got recently from the government, talking about 460 people who have confirmed to have been arrested in connection with the violent disorder that we saw earlier this month. Many more arrests still to be made, and we talked throughout the week as well about how the Crown Prosecution Service are now charging some of those people. Most of the people so far have been charged with violent disorder. We saw the first person yesterday charged with rioting. That's a much more serious offence that carries a much more serious custodial sentence of up towards 10 years. A 15-year-old boy from Sunderland that was charged with that offence. The government will be hoping that because of charging those protests with things like rioting, because of the arrests that we've already seen so far, people being sentenced very quickly and going into many of them custodial sentences, they'll be hoping that has acted as the right deterrent for them, which is perhaps a reason why we've not seen any violent disorder on the streets so far today.
Were there two sides protesting, or was it just purely Stand Up to Racism that had a presence there?
It was just Stand Up to Racism that had a presence there today. We saw no evidence of any protesters countering to them at all. As I said, it was very peaceful here. So lots of chanting and banners and speeches, but certainly no anti-immigration protest here today, which was the worry. There had been rumours. That's why West Midlands Police had said that they were going to have an increased presence in this city, but that presence seems to have gone now. The protest has finished, and people now just going about their day, finishing off their shopping.
Oh, great. All right, Jack Carson, thank you very much. And that's Jack Carson, who's at the Stand Up to Racism protest. Well, on the other side, anti-immigration protests took place in Dover earlier. And our reporter Ray Addison has this report.
So an anti-immigration protest had been scheduled to take place today here in Dover, down by the seafront. The poster for that was time to stand up and be counted against the, quote, illegal invasion of our country. So in response to that, we saw an event organised by Kent Stand Up to Racism at the Market Square here in Dover.
Oh, it looks like we've lost Ray. I wanted to hear what he had to say about that, because I do find the whole thing quite interesting, especially the anti-racism protesters who seem to think it's OK to spill out a load of rhetoric against certain individuals who they may claim they think is racist, but yet they're not. So it does seem very odd that some people seem to be able to do that. Well, to stay with us, loads still to come on GB News. My panel will be joining me live. We will have a chat with the former Chief Immigration Officer of the UK Border Force, Kevin Saunders, in just a moment. Stay tuned. Keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/you're safe.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Northern Opera Group performs rare and wonderful operas in imaginative ways, enabling audiences and artists to discover new works and composers from across opera's history. The group produces the annual Leeds Opera Festival, which combines new productions of rare operas with a wide range of talks, panel discussions, workshops and other events. 2024 marks the festival's 8th season, and it's set to offer the world a premiere of Northern Opera Group's latest commission, Sherlock Holmes and the Sign of Four, an interpretation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle 19th century mystery novel. It's the first ever opera adaptation of the enigmatic detective. The artistic director of the Northern Opera Group, David Ward, joins me now to tell us more. David, welcome to GB News. If this is the first time that Sherlock Holmes has been translated into opera, I'm imagining that may mean that it's quite difficult to do. Is that so?
It's certainly a creative challenge, yes, and we knew that when we started on the project. I mean, as you'll know, opera traditionally has been slower-paced stories, ones that relied on less kind of narrative drive and action. So our first challenge was actually how do we translate this kind of story into opera? So it's been about looking at that musical language we use, the theatrical language, and I very much hope that we have been able to find a solution to do that. Well, it first started in 2020 when we all had a lot of time on our hands, and I finally picked up the Sherlock Holmes novels to have a read. And as I was reading them, it just struck me that these could make a fantastic opera, as well as those great theatrical set pieces. You know, you've also got a wonderful kind of cast of characters that you could have on stage. I also got really interested in this idea of how do you use music to show Sherlock's internal world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 17 minutes even after 3 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome. You'll be pleased to know it's only the beginning of the show. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. You can also download the GB News app. It's completely free. Or why not check us out on YouTube? All the programmes are streamed there live. Now, coming up, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Well, come on, I could not, could I? Their security detail in Colombia are using bulletproof briefcases to protect them. But is this overtly extreme? Or if it isn't, then why go? How can that be safer than the UK? Next, do you believe there is a two-tier approach to policing protests? That is the question I'm asking. Joining me to discuss, because it's time for the British debate this hour, I'm asking you because this weekend across the UK, we were on high alert, where we had protests in Dover, Birmingham and Taunton, including lots of demonstrations by far-right groups and Stand Up to Racism. Now, data shows that over 460 people were arrested in connection with earlier violent protests. 99 already have been sentenced and 300 remanded in custody. And this is very swift action indeed. But will this swift justice work? The aim, obviously, is to maintain public safety, but with protests continuing, is the current approach effective or is a new strategy needed? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe there's a two-tier approach there? Because who are the people that are being arrested? What about some of the so-called peaceful counter-protesters? Well, joining me now is political commentator Lee Harris and also former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. I'm going to start with you, Lee Harris. The current version of this protesting is swift justice, Keir Starmer. They will use potential facial recognition technology, and then they'll come and get you later. Or maybe if you're that bad and they catch you at the protest, then they get you then. Do you think that's the right approach?
Personally, I have no problem with coming down hard on, say, for example, violent protest. I don't think anyone would argue that we need to make sure that if you're going out and throwing rocks at the police and burning down buildings, we need to take a very strong approach to that. But with regards to is there a two-tier policing approach? I mean, it's unarguable to say that there has been for a very, very long time. And we can go back as far as the anti-lockdown protests, where the police came down on them like a ton of bricks. And you look at how they dealt with the Just Stop Oil and the Extinction Rebellion protests, where they were blocking traffic and stopping ambulances, and the police were literally bringing them cups of tea.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Does anybody want a cup of tea? If only we had that clip of that officer.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
And there's a photograph, isn't there, of a police officer literally giving, I think it was a priest, he's got with the dog collar on, literally giving some water while he's sat there in the middle of the road. Just get them out of the road. So. And there are many, many more examples. The BLM protests.
Well, I was going to say that springs to mind immediately.
And one of the most recent examples, which really wound me up, if I'm going to be honest, was this was during the riots. We had the West Midlands Police Force, who did an interview on another channel, and basically openly admitted two-tier policing. Not just that. They explain precisely how it works. So they'll have a nice, cosy little chat with these community leaders, as they call them. They'll decide how they, between themselves, they'll decide how they'll police that, whatever I think this was suggested protests in Birmingham at the time. And then it will just turn into a nice, cosy little chat, basically, and they'll decide by themselves. And what I found amazing was the reporter at the time actually said to the police officer, would you have done this if it was an EDL protest?
Oh, God, no.
And, of course, everyone knows they wouldn't have done it. So it seems that certain communities are getting a nice soft-touch approach to policing, and other areas of society, they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Well, you saw the beginning of the pro-Palestinian protests. They did very little.
Yeah.
In the protests, they were frightened. The people were chanting anti-Semitic chants. People were climbing buildings and defacing monuments.
Absolutely.
And nothing really happened.
We had so many incidents. There was an incident where a swastika sign was being used and the police made excuses for it, saying it depends on the context. We had, I hope I pronounced this right, Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is now a prescribed terrorist organisation, violently shouting jihad or calling for jihad, and the Metropolitan Police literally made excuses for it.
They were making justifications for when that word can be used in a different context, meaning something else.
Exactly. He was stood in front of a banner, a big orange banner that says Muslim war or something like that, right behind him. Muslim army, sorry, it said behind him. It was very, very obvious, the context. We're adults. I just cannot believe that Mark Rowley has the gall to turn around and say that two-tier policing is complete nonsense. It's gaslighting. He's lying.
Well, he may disagree with that. And Sadiq...
And Keir Starmer is lying.
Sadiq Khan's scared in his own London, which I find most amusing either.
Yes.
Is he wrong?
Lee? No, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong?
He's not wrong. But I think there are different ways that you can handle this. In particular, if I can deal with the subject you've just been dealing with, I'm very concerned about what was going on here in London previously in respect of Gaza. I couldn't understand that. I actually came here 3 times to watch some of what was going on.
Right.
I always walked against where they were walking one way, just to see as if I was a general, ordinary person walking. I couldn't believe how much they were saying and chanting that is clearly against the law. Clearly. And now that obviously was before the current government got in at the general election. And I think there has been a comforting place by some areas of policing. I'm not really criticising the Met alone, because there is other policing that is going on in these areas. And I just think that we have to get this right. We have to stop people not from being allowed to demonstrate. Of course, demonstration should be allowed.
Agreed.
But there have to be things that where you say something that is against the law, which is what we're talking about, you know, against the sea and all those sort of things, we can't allow that to go on. And I hope we won't.
There seems to be a sort of hierarchy of acceptance, though. So if you were to say, just as Lee said, if you were part of the ETL, they'd come at you with some sort of force. But if you were to say things that were deemed as anti-Semitic or alongside some of the narrative that you heard with the pro-Palestinian protests, there seems to be an acceptance of that, as though they're scared of the numbers that are involved in it, and this is why they've left them behind. And even Keir Starmer's crackdown, I believe, is somewhat one-sided against anyone who criticises immigration.
I was just going to say to you, Nana, of course, what this could create now is a much different form of policing, because when you are now seeing Gaza dealt with like we've seen in London, then the kind of thing that they've been doing over the last few weeks with people who've quite rightly been arrested and charged, etc., etc. I have no problem with any of that, but we have to have a situation where we don't have this kind of anti-Semitic behaviour in our streets, in particular in our capital city.
Because it does appear that as soon as the backlash is hitting Sadiq Khan, he noticed it now as being a Muslim. As soon as it felt like the narrative had shifted against Muslims, then he was suddenly engaging with it more so than he had been previously. And I think a lot of people, I don't think it's acceptable on any level. So
No,
against Jewish, against Muslim, against anyone, it's wrong. But in my view, it should be handled in a very balanced and even manner, and I don't see that happening. But I'm going to speak to the former chief...
Go on.
I'm going to speak to the former Chief Immigration Officer of the UK Border Force, Kevin Saunders, to get his views on that as well. Kevin, thank you very much for joining me. So we are dealing with most of this protest. The narrative is clearly around immigration. What are your thoughts with regard to the way these particular things, these protests, are being policed?
Oh, dear me. I don't think there should be any demonstrations at all. My view is that the government should put a complete ban on immigration, on protests at the moment, because it's just turning into riots, and we can't have riots. Whatever the issues, we can't have people rioting, smashing up shops, stealing, and what have you. Look at the amount of time that we've had to spend over the last couple of weeks with trials, sending all these people to prison and what have you. No, if there was a complete ban on demonstrations for, say, a month, it would hopefully take the sting out of everything.
Well, what about freedom of speech, Kevin? You can't, I mean, we're not in a dictatorship where you can stop people from talking. Surely there should be allowed, but the police need to be able to cope. Why can't the police cope?
Well, I agree with you. We should be allowed to demonstrate, but we should be allowed to demonstrate peacefully, and we're not demonstrating peacefully. Therefore, we have to ban them. I'm not saying we ban them forever and a day. I would just ban them for a month, just to take the sting out of things and say, you can't have any riots or you can't have any protests on anything for the next month.
But that's impossible. I don't see how you're going to stop that. If you've got a load of people on the streets there, I just don't see how that would even be. I don't even see how that could work. If a load of people get out there and start demonstrating, what then? It won't work, and then you look like you've got no power.
Well, you might be right there, but I mean, I don't like to go outside the house now, just in case I bump into a riot or something like that. It's not right what's going on. It shouldn't be happening in the United Kingdom. We are not a country where we should have this sort of thing. And the riots aren't about an issue, they're about criminality, as we saw the other day with people smashing down shoe shops and stealing trainers. And in Hull, we saw that man going into a shop stealing beauty products and then giving them away. It's nothing to do with immigration. It's just pure criminality.
Well, a lot of these people coming to these riots are opportunists, Kevin. That's what that's about. But the issues still remain. Very briefly, I've got about 30 seconds with you, Kevin. What should Keir Starmer be doing then? Because the riots are happening, he can't stop them, or the protests even. You're saying ban protests. That's not going to work. What do you think Keir Starmer should be doing?
Well, perhaps he ought to be making a more effort to stop the boats. I mean, that's the big problem. If we could stop the boats completely, then the problem probably would go away. But we're not stopping the boats. Although I have to say, still no crossings yesterday or today, which is a good sign. But I do understand that the problem is actually boats. The smugglers are having difficulty getting boats.
Well, listen, Kevin, it's been really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. He's the former Chief Immigration Officer for the UK Border Force. Yes, perhaps Keir Starmer could address the situation of the boats. Joining me now, Ivor Kaplan and also Lee Harris. You were saying...
I was just about to say, and listening to what Kevin was saying there, I mean, it's impossible just to stop demonstrations or anything like that. What we've got to do, I think, is to manage it properly. And we've got to be able to have the policing that we need to make sure these things happen. That's what I was just saying about what we saw previously in relation to anti-Semitic behaviour in London. I think that there are lots of good things going on in different parts of the country. And the problem when things just happen in London is that everyone thinks that must be it. So in some ways, we need to get to a point where the policing matches what people think is the right thing to do. And I think that's where we need to try and get to.
Lee Harris.
I think it's getting much worse. And I think the situation from a public perspective is getting worse too, because we're looking at, just as we were talking a moment ago, every single weekend for months, we had hate marches calling for intifada, genocidal chanting, violent calls for jihad, open support for terrorists. And I think there was a recent case of a Sutton man, 61, I've got the headline in front of me, who chanted, I won't obviously repeat it, something, Houthi is Allah, and he was jailed for 18
Well, what
months.
about the ones that were supporting the Houthis? About the boats.
Exactly. and at the time, at the time when we had the demonstrations for the anti-Israel protest, we had the Met defending the use of the word jihad. And the point I was trying to make is the public perception of fairness is being eroded, and that is not good. It's not going to end well.
Well, OK, thank you for that, Lee Harris and Kevin Saunders. Stay with us. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. 31 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. On the way, next, royal biographer Angela Levin will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. But first, let's get your latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Nana, thank you. It's 3:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Your top story this hour. 125 firefighters have been battling a blaze at London's iconic Somerset House. Smoke was spotted billowing from the roof of the historic building on the Strand just before midday. 20 fire engines were sent to the scene. The director of Somerset House Trust said the fire broke out in the west wing of the building and assured there are no artworks in that area. The venue is now closed and all events this afternoon have been cancelled. The cause of the fire is still unknown. In Scotland, a member of the SNP has been kicked out of the party for comments about the Israel-Hamas war, described as utterly abhorrent. John Mason's been accused of flippantly dismissing the deaths of more than 40,000 Palestinians. Party officials will now meet to discuss a fixed time period of suspension. Greater Manchester Police have launched a murder investigation after a man who became trapped in a burning building died in hospital. Officers were called to a fire on Dumbarton Green in Wigan early on Wednesday morning. It's being treated as a suspected arson attack. President Biden admits he's optimistic that a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel could be in sight. Tensions, though, are still high in the Middle East, with an airstrike hitting Lebanon earlier, killing at least 10 people. Israel claims it was targeting a Hezbollah weapons centre. And an infectious disease expert says it's very likely that a new deadlier variant of monkeypox, previously known as monkeypox, is already in the UK. The clade 1b strain has been confirmed in Sweden after first being detected in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The new, more transmissible strains caused hundreds of deaths around the world. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Sunny spells and fine weather continuing through this afternoon, but there will be some showers and it will be particularly breezy across the northwest of Scotland. And that's due to this area of low pressure and this squeeze of isobars giving particularly windy and gusty conditions, but further south it's a much quieter picture through the rest of Saturday. So for the southeast, plenty of hazy sunshine around, a couple of showers across western parts and particularly across northwest Scotland there will be showers continuing to feed through as well. Breezy here too with that wind, and over hills it's going to be feeling quite cool. But generally it's going to be a largely dry night, fairly fresh temperatures into the low double figures and maybe into the single figures in a few rural spots as well. So to start the day on Sunday, lots of dry weather around. But further north, there still be showers feeding in. The far northeast of Scotland may see some brighter skies to start off with, but we are going to hold on to these showers moving in from the west. Further south, western parts, again, seeing some early morning showers, but further east, again, more in the way of sunshine. Wales, there'll be a couple of showers over the hills, and most of the southeast will be seeing a bright start to the day on Sunday. There will be some clouds continuing to bubble up through the day, but we do see those conditions beginning to settle down. Any of these showers starting to melt away across the southwest and through Wales. And any showers by the afternoon really being restricted to the far north of England and parts of Scotland. And even here, there'll be a little bit fewer and further between than we've seen through today. Still breezy though, and not feeling particularly warm with temperatures at best into the mid-teens across Scotland, but warmer further south and feeling quite pleasant in that sunshine if we get to 25 degrees. Elsewhere through the rest of Sunday, a largely fine and dry night, most places staying dry, just a couple of showers still feeding into the far northwest. It's all changed though into the start of next week, rain arriving from the west on Monday and staying unsettled as we head through the early part of next week. That's all from me, bye bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. 37 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And each Saturday, I love to give you a rundown. And who'd better to do so than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela, welcome.
Thank you.
There is a lot to talk about. So what should we start with? Should we go with Prince Harry and Meghan, seeing as they're on their security detail in Colombia, the drug capital of the world, I think it is, or is that Scotland?
I think we should. What is extraordinary, there are hundreds of things that are extraordinary, but what is really extraordinary is all the things they hated doing, they are now doing. And they're doing it with a smile, and they want to do it better than anybody else. You know, you start there, that's where you end as well, because you think this is phony. This is all to say, I can do better than you can, but actually they can't. Very interestingly, that the Vice President, Francia Marquez, she saw Meghan and Harry on Netflix when they did the six episodes. No, that was a slip of the tongue.
It was a Freudian slip.
Yes, 6 hours of it, which it nearly killed me because I had to watch it. It was so boring, it was so difficult. She fell in love with Meghan and thought, this is wonderful, I must meet the woman. So Harry, very little interest in him. So he was standing in the back. He didn't speak or understand Spanish. He could just say, what is your name? How old are you? Which is... at least he tried a bit. So it was so unfair. It was so negative, I thought. So I went back, actually, and looked at the 6 episodes. And this was the one where Meghan mimics the Queen, which I think she lost a lot of followers on that. And she bent over and she said
Did the fake curtsy. Yeah, that wasn't very nice.
Yeah. But... she was teaching little girls there to do curtsies for her because she is a princess. And so those little kids were trying to learn how to do...
Is that what she was doing in Colombia?
Yes.
Teaching the kids how to curtsy?
Yes.
When yet she had mocked the curtsy?
Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
Terrible.
I thought, I couldn't believe that. And I just checked that was in... shocking.
She says they don't want to be royal, but they do want to be treated as though they are royal.
Yes, that's right. Well, Meghan does anyway. I think Harry looks so miserable and unhappy.
On this one, I thought he looked very happy. In fact, to me, they looked very happy. And I'm happy that they're happy. But the point that we make is that stop slagging off your family and stop taking advantage of the royal titles. That's what we're all after. We don't care. Do what you like, but, don't use the royal name.
No, they had the opportunity. The Queen wished them very well. The late Queen wished them very well. They should go away and have a lifetime. Yeah. But Meghan is very resentful, and she's going to go on and on and on until she sorts it out. But what was also silly is that they were telling us how to think, how to behave, which was also a nonsense, You must behave perfect. You have to... What was this one? What people are acting on information that isn't true.
Oh,
well,
yes, I heard that bit about it. Yes.
That's one of their things, that they don't actually tell the truth about many things, I've found. And what they're doing is actually
They might argue that it's their truth, which is what has come out of it, even though there were 17 clear inconsistencies in the Oprah interview.
19
Was
there
it
were.
19?
Yes, there we are. But you can't actually go around telling everybody else what to do if you're not doing it. I think that's a nonsense. And I think that this is very much to upset the royal family even more because of the danger and also any arrangements they might do, any promises to do a deal with them, or to make sure that they become more familiar with us, or with sort of changing the way that the royal family works for their way. And I hope that the royal family who are in Scotland have a big think about this, because I think it affects the royal family very seriously. And if they're going to go to a country, every 2 to 3 weeks and build up something against the royal...
Yes, the royal family need to be wary of that.
They should really definitely be wary of it.
Would you say that there needs to be sort of a motion towards... I know that the King and Queen can't do it, but there should be some sort of motion towards removing their titles so they can no longer trade with them. Like, if they want to do royal so-called faux tours around the world, that's up to them, do what you like. But to do it on the back of being royalty when you have stepped back from the very thing that you're doing is very disingenuous.
Yes, I mean, this is a parliamentary thing to do. The King can't do it.
It could be done.
Yes, it can be done, but they can't take away Prince. They can take away Dutch and Duchess, but they can't take Prince because he was born a prince.
Yeah, but I
you
think
can't
you can
take that away.
I'm sure you can.
Well, I've been told you can't be. But if... Otherwise, Meghan also gets called princess, and I don't actually think many of us want that. But I think they've got to do something now, because it's coming to a spot that is dangerous.
Well, Parliament make the laws, so you could make a law. And the King, obviously, the bills go to the King in the end, so they could change the law. They could change the law and they could do it. So I don't buy into the fact that they couldn't do this. They could if they wanted to, they don't want to.
Yes, I think they might be very nervous about what Harry and Meghan can write, and Harry will do part 2 of his book, and Meghan is threatening that she will do her book and she will hold nothing back. And although a lot of it won't be believed and it won't be true, it might be their truth, I think it will cause a tremendous turnaround that will be very, very difficult. I mean, it's awful to have a child like that who wants to go off the rails in such a way. He's nearly 40 and he actually complains about not speaking to his daddy, and that sort of childish thing of stamping and having a little, scream at his family and blaming William.
Screams at them, but we do know that he was looking for an apology when, in many's view, he was the one that needed to give it.
Well, yes, of course he does. But no, he has been shouting. I know he has been shouting at his father because they've been waiting for an apology to Meghan. And that's one of the reasons, not the only reason. Now it is because King Charles is having treatments and he's got to be calm and quiet. But he has been screaming at his father.
And you know this?
I do know this. I do know this, yes. And you don't want to hear that every time that somebody comes up. And actually, it's squashed into 20 minutes or 10 minutes, and then he's off. So if you really, really want to do this, I think you come for 2 weeks and you talk about everything slowly, quietly, and with understanding where the other one comes from. Yeah. But he doesn't do that. He wants it now. He turns up. Anyway, the other thing, Meghan did quite a bit of Spanish, by the way, yes. Mm. She could understand quite a lot. She was chatting away at some of them, so that's very good. The Duchess of Edinburgh had gone there last year, and she went, and it was a very good tour. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't dangerous at that time, and she was working with women in conflict, and the British Embassy helped her at the request of the Commonwealth Development Office, and that all went very well. They've got no one helping them. They've got no idea, nobody. So that it's going to blow up, I think.
Do you think in their faces? I mean, look, they've got some bulletproof briefcases, though, to help them, because the place is quite dangerous.
And 14 cars that take them to and from.
It just seems, you know, if you're going to complain about all of that, then perhaps you should go somewhere that's a little bit safer. You're going to be worried about your protection. But Angela Levin, thank you very much. We'll be discussing that in our Great British Debate next. We'll be talking about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's security detail in Colombia. They're using bulletproof briefcases to protect them whilst on their trip. But, you know, is it time now to review their security? Should they get the RAVIC special protection? That's next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Losing someone, saying goodbye, never easy, but there is a way, maybe, to make it slightly more manageable, depending how you think.
Yeah, we're going to speak now to the comedian and British icon, frankly, Paul Chuckle. He thinks it's time to put the fun into funeral. This is after, sadly, he lost his brother, Barry, and Paul now wants to highlight what he perceives to be changing attitudes to the way we hold funerals.
Well, Paul, a very good morning to you. First of all, condolences about Barry. We all knew him, and obviously you still miss him.
Yes, good morning to you too. Yeah, obviously, it was 6 years ago yesterday that he passed away. It's gone very quick, but in Barry's funeral case, you know, it was a thing of celebrating his life, really. All his friends were there, people we've worked with over the years, and we just talked all afternoon and evening about his life. It's more of a celebration.
New research from Co-op Funeral Care says that people are more coming round to this way of thinking, that in the way they dress and what they sing and taking selfies at funerals, all sorts of things. And by and large, I mean, bearing in mind how you said goodbye to Barry, which I believe was at Rotherham Football Club, was it?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's always a very sad day when you lose someone. But as a report from Co-op Funeral Care says, a funeral doesn't have to be a sad day, which it wasn't there. See, Barry and myself always been big Rotherham United fans, and the thing was to have his funeral, really, most of his funeral on the day at New York Stadium.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. 49 minutes after 3 o'clock. It's time for our second Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Prince Harry be given royal protection, the special royal protection? He and Meghan, with their security detail, they're using bulletproof briefcases to protect them from potential shooters during their 4-day trip in Colombia. That doesn't sound overtly safe, frankly. But at least they've taken part in an art session and planted trees during a visit to a school in the capital, Bogota. I suppose, how did they get there? Private jet? On a Bombardier, probably the most polluting aircraft to mankind. But do extreme security measures create more panic? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do you think? Should they be given royal protection? Joining me now, political commentator Lee Harris and former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Captain. I know this will be a subject close to your heart.
It is close to my heart. Actually, just to... When William and Harry were at a college... I was the minister responsible for them whilst I was at the Ministry of Defence.
Really?
And so on one occasion, and this is a great occasion actually, I get a phone call from a well-known newspaper, shall we say, let's call it something like The Sun, and what happened is they wanted to know why we hadn't put stuff around the whole of the college so that the two of them could be protected.
No.
And I said, are you really going to publish this? I challenged them to publish it, and they never did.
Oh, they never did?
They never did. But that's an absolute truth.
Wow.
And it happened all those years ago, so it doesn't really matter. But it was a moment of just understanding that you don't have to do that just because it's the royal family. You want them to have as much of a normal time in college as you can get. And what happens now, I think they'll be perfectly safe in Colombia.
Of course they will, yeah.
You know, there's no doubt about that. And we've used proper circumstances over the years for making sure everyone is safe.
So should does Prince Harry have a point? Should he get this RAVIC protection, which is only meant for working royals? I mean, you know, if you step back, you have to acknowledge that is part of the deal. Surely part of the things that he's done himself have made him a target. Nobody's revealed a kill count. Nobody told him to do that. Nobody told him to talk about these things.
No. I think that... I don't think Harry is under any sort of pressures in the context. I think that, you know, the royal family is the royal family, and we want to make sure the royal family are safe and sound whenever they're doing things. I personally would like to see Harry and Meghan come back and be part of, you know, King Charles's, you know, dealing with all the issues that are there. There are lots and lots of times when people want the royal family to do something and we don't have the actual capability to do it all. So that would be another pair of hands on deck that would be very good, and I think that would be a good thing for Harry and Meghan to do.
Well, they're worried about their security. That's why they've gone to America, where people have the right to bear arms. Lee Harris.
Yeah. I think he's a whinging, conniving hypocrite, Nana.
He would argue that he is not whinging or conniving. A hypocrite may be.
Well, look, I do have sympathy for obviously what happened to his mum and his experience with the press. I think all of us, anyone with a conscience, can understand that. But what I can't get, I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago I was on this show and we were discussing the same thing, and I suggested that by him saying that he wasn't going to bring his grandchildren over to see King Charles, that was some form of emotional blackmail, which I do believe, that's just my opinion, and I believe that's what happened. And I feel like my opinion has been kind of vindicated by the fact that he's in Colombia and he was able to pay for... I'm assuming he's paying for his own security.
I don't know who's paying for it. We don't know the details.
It's an assumption. I'm sure King Charles isn't paying for it.
He may not have paid for it. They may have, because I think he was invited, so they would have pulled out all the stock.
It would be the government of Colombia who are dealing with this matter.
But he's
that's
prepared
for them to
go to Colombia, and yet he won't come to this country because he feels that it's he needs the security. And let's not forget, it was his decision. He knew exactly what he was getting into. He knew what would happen if he stepped away from royal duties. This was something that wasn't a surprise. So him sort of coming back and take... Was it a court case that he tried to take?
Yes, he tried to sue home.
And I'm like, he lost.
But dude,
he lost.
Exactly, and understandably so, because he literally he knew what that decision would result in, and so I find the whole thing completely ludicrous and hypocritical.
What do you think? GBNews.com/. You'll say, you know, I'd love to get your comments. I will read some of those as well. Keep them all coming. Plus, don't forget you can stream the show live on YouTube. Up next, you know I couldn't resist. I've got to do my Nana's Niggle, Harry and Meghan. I know you're probably bored of it all, but I just thought I had to put my oar in and give you my 2 pennies worth, because obviously they're after to get another faux royal tour. But now let's get an update with your weather. Do not go anywhere.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Sunny spells and fine weather continuing through this afternoon, but there will be some showers and it will be particularly breezy across the northwest of Scotland. And that's due to this area of low pressure and this squeeze of isobars giving particularly windy and gusty conditions, but further south it's a much quieter picture through the rest of Saturday. So for the southeast, plenty of hazy sunshine around, a couple of showers across western parts and particularly across northwest Scotland there will be showers continuing to feed through as well. Breezy here too with that wind, and over hills it's going to be feeling quite cool. But generally it's going to be a largely dry night, fairly fresh temperatures into the low double figures and maybe into the single figures in a few rural spots as well. So to start the day on Sunday, lots of dry weather around. But further north, there still be showers feeding in. The far northeast of Scotland may see some brighter skies to start off with, but we are going to hold on to these showers moving in from the west. Further south, western parts again seeing some early morning showers, but further east again more in the way of sunshine. Wales, there'll be a couple of showers over the hills, and most of the southeast will be seeing a bright start to the day on Sunday. There will be some clouds continuing to bubble up through the day, but we do see those conditions beginning to settle down. Any of these showers starting to melt away across the southwest and through Wales. And any showers by the afternoon really being restricted to the far north of England and parts of Scotland. And even here, there'll be a little bit fewer and further between than we've seen through today. Still breezy though, and not feeling particularly warm, with temperatures at best into the mid-teens across Scotland, but warmer further south and feeling quite pleasant in that sunshine if we get to 25 degrees. Elsewhere through the rest of Sunday, a largely fine and dry night, most places staying dry, just a couple of showers still feeding into the far northwest. It's all changed though into the start of next week, rain arriving from the west on Monday and staying unsettled as we head through the early part of next week. That's all from me, bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British giveaway. It didn't cost much to enter, but of course if you're not in, you can't win. And here I am, having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Stump.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to GB News live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me now is political commentator Lee Harris and also former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. Coming up in the next few hours, police forces across the UK have been on standby today. That was amid reported protests across the country. Then in the Pulse, UK doctors are on high alert over the deadly spread of the Mpox virus. It looks nasty. And then will Labour's plan to end the 8 a.m. GP appointment scramble work? We'll be running through all of that. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, I'm Sophia Wenslow with your headlines at just after 4 o'clock. Priceless artworks, including a Van Gogh painting, have not been damaged and all the public are safe after a fire ripped through the roof of the historic Somerset House. London Fire Brigade said 125 firefighters and 20 fire engines were helping to tackle the blaze in central London. It broke out earlier this morning. Smoke was spotted billowing from the roof of the historic building on the Strand just before midday. The venue is now closed and all events this afternoon have been cancelled. The cause of the fire is still unknown. In Scotland, a member of the SNP has been kicked out of the party for comments about the Israel-Hamas war described as utterly abhorrent. John Mason's been accused of flippantly dismissing the deaths of more than 40,000 Palestinians. Party officials will now meet to discuss a fixed time period of suspension. Greater Manchester Police have launched a murder investigation after a man who became trapped in a burning building died in hospital. Officers were called to a fire on Dumbarton Green in Wigan early on the Wednesday morning. It's being treated as a suspected arson attack. It's reported that former newsreader Hugh Edwards is now accused of sexually assaulting a 27-year-old man in a West End club after sending explicit text messages. This follows earlier revelations that the 62-year-old admitted receiving child sex images and videos. The alleged victim claims Edwards, who continued despite being asked to stop, was brazenly aggressive and got off on the risk of getting caught. It's also alleged in the Daily Mail and the Sun newspaper the former BBC star threatened to kill anyone who looked at the man whom he described as his possession. Police across the country are on high alert today as protests and counter-protests take place nationwide. It follows the arrest of 460 people so far linked to violent disorder earlier this month, with hundreds now facing court. Tensions are expected to be high in Birmingham, with the group Stand Up to Racism also taking to the streets. Meanwhile, our reporter Ray Addison has been speaking to protesters in Dover.
Calling me a racist and they're calling me a fascist and a Nazi. I'm just British. In my country, holding my Union Jack, looking out for my children and grandchildren, whom I've got 3 of.
I love my country and I want our future, our kids to have something have something, When they grow up, I don't want them to inherit something that's, it'll be dangerous for them in the future. They'll have no facilities to use, they don't get a doctor's appointment.
I've come down here just really so I can actually see what the reaction is. There must be 50 police here now protecting 4 of us. It's because they want to attack us, and yet we're the ones that are being called the aggressors. We're the ones that are being called the fascists and the racists.
In Ireland, a teenage boy has appeared in court charged over a stabbing outside Renmore Barracks. Army chaplain Father Paul Murphy posted on social media to say he was doing OK after receiving treatment for serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The 16-year-old boy, who cannot be named because he's a minor, was refused bail and remanded in custody. A private funeral for one of the 3 young girls stabbed to death in Southport has been held today. 6-year-old BB King was attacked during a dance class at the end of last month. The killing sparked anti-immigration and counter-protests across the UK, in part because of misinformation about the suspect. And in Gaza, it's reported at least 18 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike Hours earlier, President Joe Biden had claimed he was optimistic a ceasefire deal with Hamas was closer than it's ever been. Following negotiations with mediators in Qatar, Joe Biden told reporters there were just a couple of issues standing in the way of an agreement which could lead to hostages being freed.
I'm optimistic, not far from over. Just a couple more issues, I think we got a shot.
And anyone travelling to an African country affected by a new strain of Mpox is being urged to get vaccinated. Fresh advice has been issued by the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control after the virus emerged in the Congo. More than 500 people have died on the continent so far this year. Sweden's recorded its first case, while Pakistan's trying to establish whether a person there is affected. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, before we get stuck into the debates, here's what else is coming up today. Police forces across the UK have been on standby amid reported protests along with planned gatherings by campaign groups, including Stand Up to Racism. We'll have some reports from earlier on in the day in Birmingham. Then, how safe do you feel on the streets, as police have said that they will continue their zero tolerance for knife crime and will pay thugs with zombie knives who surrender their weapons before the official ban next month. In the Pulse, UK doctors are on high alert over a deadly spread of the Mpox virus. Is the next pandemic closer than we think? And Labour will struggle to meet the pledge to end the 8 a.m. GP dash without core funding. So are GPs at breaking point? That is coming up in the next hour. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, Nana's niggle. I thought I'd slip it in now and we'll move on from the Royals very quickly. But I've got to do it. 7 minutes after 4 o'clock, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Harry and Meghan, they're at it again. Another faux royal tour. Really, we've had quite enough. Filling the vacuum that has been left by the royal family, the couple have emerged in the cocaine capital of the world, which, by Harry's own admission, he was previously many years ago partial. Colombia is one of the most dangerous places in the world and ranks somewhat higher than the UK on all forms of violent crime. Yet, despite his fears for his family's safety in the UK, Harry and Meghan look comfortable and very relaxed in Colombia. Could security simply be an excuse as a way of holding his family hostage for not getting what he wants? Pretty spoilt, methinks. Earlier in the week, Harry had a side swipe at Elon Musk. He said what happens online ends up on the streets. Hardly. It's pretty rare that happens. Most people online are keyboard warriors and make their threats from behind a keyboard. But if he's that concerned about it, he might want to have a word with the Sussex squad who carry out their online abuse using the Sussex name. No, nothing from the pair on that, about that. Look, I'm happy that they seem happy, but they've stepped away from royal duties, so why are they using their titles once again and preaching from afar, grabbing onto any headline stories to stay relevant? Nothing is off limits. You can't spout compassion and goodwill until the cows come home, but yet continue to show a huge lack of it towards your own family. Whilst there may be some who can ignore this, I can't. Actions speak louder than words. Joining me now is political commentator Lee Harris and also former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. So we talked royal, so we won't go into that. Let's talk police forces. Anything to say? Nothing?
Police forces.
I've got loads to say.
All right, about police, good. Right, police forces have been on high alert. That's amid planned protests and gatherings across the UK. All of that, as new data reveals, 460 people have been arrested in connection with the violent disorder earlier this month, and hundreds face their own day in court. Let's have a listen to our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson. He has this report.
Well, here in Birmingham today, there's been this stand-up to racism counter-protest. There had been rumours of an anti-immigration protest in this city. That's why West Midlands Police said that they were going to deliver the resources onto the streets to reassure the public and also be there ready to respond to any protests that did develop. There were a few hundred people that gathered for the Stand Up to Racism protest here in the city today. Chants of anti-racism and making sure that the people that were around here and listening to those protests knew what their message was. They talked about Nigel Farage, the rise of the far right, saying that they wanted them off the streets, wanted bigots out of Brum. That was one of the banners that was paraded, and a placard that was walked around the protest here. Ultimately, it was very peaceful, but the police here were on hand, police liaison.
Apologies to that. The audio is so bad that we thought we'd just move on to this one because it's a very, very poignant story, very sad story as well. If you just joined us 10 minutes after 4 o'clock, this is GB News now. A private funeral for one of the 3 young girls stabbed to death in Southport is taking place today. Joining me now is GB News Northwest reporter Sophie Reaper, who is live from a flower show that's linked to the event. Sophie, talk to me about the flower show and why this is being held and what the connection is.
Well, Nana, this is the 100th anniversary of this incredible flower show here in Southport. So to mark it, we're at one particular exhibition created by the wonderful Nikki and Joe. So we'll just show it to you. So there we are, 100 in those beautiful sunflowers grown by Joe himself. So we're going to speak to them now. Nikki, talk to me about Southport Flower Show. This isn't your first time here, is it? This is... you've been here many times.
We've been doing this flower show for years and years and years, yes.
And how does it compare to other shows that you've been to before? How does it feel to be at 100th anniversary?
It feels amazing to be able to celebrate with them, and obviously I tried to do a display focusing on the 100th anniversary. So yeah, it's great to be involved.
It's absolutely beautiful what you've managed to produce.
You.
Well done.
Thank you.
Joe, I believe you're from Southport originally, aren't you?
Yeah, just in Holster, which is about 5 miles away.
The road.
Yeah.
Obviously, Southport is going through an incredibly difficult time at the moment. We had that tragedy just a few weeks ago, the funeral for one of the girls today.
Yeah.
How important is it that at times, tragic times like this, that communities like the one here in Southport can kind of come together and have that community spirit?
Oh, it's vitally important, but also just basically to keep things going as usual. You know, I know we've been through extraordinary times, but it's just good to have that business as usual.
And do you think, Nikki, that this is going to help people remember those girls who tragically lost their lives so young?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's sad to remember the 100th anniversary under such sad times, but also it does remember them in a good way as well. You know, our hearts go out to all the families and who were involved in it, but it's been a really good community spirit here at the flower show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much both for joining me this afternoon. And I think there you go, that's absolutely true. Thousands of people have come down to the Southport Flower Show today, Nana, to enjoy the festivities 100th anniversary, but also to pay their respects and come together with that community spirit to support those families who've gone through the most tragic experience one could possibly ever imagine.
Sophie Reaper is live from a flower show in Southport. Well, joining me now, though, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Next up, should the police pay thugs to give up their weapons?
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joining us now is GB News Royal Correspondent Cameron Walker to explain exactly what this is all about. Cameron, hi. We have heard Meghan and Harry talk about their mental health issues before in the past. So tell us more about this site they're launching.
Yes, it's a very serious topic, a very ambitious site that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have launched this weekend. It's called the Parents Network, and it's set up in collaboration with 6 or 7 groups of parents who have lost, tragically, a child to suicide, linked to their social media use. So it's connecting and offering help to parents who've lost a child, and that can be anything from cyberbullying, depression and anxiety, sexual exploitation, eating disorders and other traumas. And sadly, there are too many examples across the world, and Meghan and Harry have decided to tackle this very important topic, but also very difficult topic to cover. Now, Meghan's critics, we heard from that clip there, she was talking about her own experience of suicidal thoughts when she was a working member of the royal family. Her critics will say, why on earth is she making it all about herself? To be fair to Meghan, when the journalist Jane Pooley asks her, Jane Pooley specifically asked her about her suicidal thoughts when she was a working member of the royal family, she wasn't expecting it. She did give, to be fair, quite an eloquent answer, and Prince Harry then talks about the fact that all parents across the world need to be first responders when they're talking about helping their children overcome mental health problems related to social media use. There's lots of help and resources on the Archewell website, and I think it's going to be a while before we see if any of the words we've heard from Duke and Duchess of Sussex in this interview have any substance or any tangible impact going forward.
Brilliant. That's our royal correspondent Cameron Walker.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. 17 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome. Welcome. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should the police pay thugs to give up their weapons? A new weapon surrender scheme will offer market value compensation to owners of zombie knives and machetes, provided they hand over them before the 24th of September. And also they provide proof of purchase or some sort of receipt so they can get the market value. Now, the ban comes in response to the surge in knife crime. We've had over 50,000 offences reported in the past year. But critics argue that paying for weapons could incentivise illegal purchases. And while supporters see it as a necessary step to get these dangerous items off the street, is this approach too lenient on crime? So should the police be paying thugs to give up their weapons? So that's my question to you. What do you think? gbnews.com/yoursay. But joining me now, political commentator Lee Harris and also former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. I'm going to start with you, Ivor, because this is about defence. You were a former Labour Defence Minister, and you will know a lot more about this than most of us.
Yes.
So why are they doing this?
It's not an unusual circumstance in governments, different governments across different places, that you try and get in things that can be dangerous for the public. And I can understand why people want to do that. Whether that's the right time to do it just after everything that's been going on in these last few weeks, I think you could question whether that's necessary.
Well, the policy was set up by the Tory party, actually, with the one good thing they actually did and one thing they actually finished. So, you know, because they were so busy infighting that nothing got done. But the 24th of September is the deadline, you see. And so Labour are carrying it on.
I think they're just carrying it on, yes.
So that's why it's when it is.
Yeah, and I just think that we do need to say to people, carrying knives is a bad thing to do. And I don't know how else we can keep saying it, because it's happening all the time. We were talking earlier, Lee and I, about a piece from BBC in Bristol the other day. Fascinating piece of how the police went around to, in the end, take 4 people who were 16 to 19 out of a car which was full of various different pieces of machetes and swords, the whole thing. And you do have to say to yourself, why on earth were these young people actually carrying all that? And well done to the police for actually knowing about it and then following it through.
But that's their job. So
no, that is their,
I appreciate that.
That is their job. But at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, which is when this happened, that's a, you know, it wasn't like, you know, 10 o'clock in the evening when you might expect these things to happen. It was in the morning. They'd obviously got this ready to go and actually be able to do this. And I think that's giving maybe to other parts of the country just a bit of an indication that this is something you can do with your policing, you can do with your organisation to try and stop as much of the use of these terrible pieces are there, you know.
But why are they even allowed to buy? I mean, why are you like? It's like the crossbow for me. Why can you buy a crossbow? Why can you buy a machete? Why can you buy a sword? Why can you buy a zombie knife? Lee Harris.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I don't understand why you would need to own... I did ask this question about a crossbow, actually, and apparently there are some legitimate reasons to have a crossbow for sporting reasons.
It's archery, isn't it?
Something like that. But no, I agree with you totally in principle. The knife crime in this country is out of control, and especially when you see these horrific incidents. I mean, I've got an 8-year-old daughter, probably not anything special, but it completely broke me in two what happened in Southport, and every time I talk about it, I try not to get emotional. And it just... you have this kind of mixture of emotion and anger, especially when, what was it, almost on the same day, we had massive gangs running around in Southend-on-Sea, machete gangs, and that's not the first time the public has seen that. There is a really solid and important argument that we have to have about the safety, people feeling safe in this country, and this is partly why I was so angry with Keir Starmer when he did these press conferences and all he spoke about was the far right. I know we discussed it. He didn't precisely say everything was on the far right, but it felt like he was talking about just the far right. And people in this country have got genuine concerns. One of those concerns is knife crime being completely out of control. And I've got to admit, if they don't start doing... This whole amnesty that we're talking about, it seems weak to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, if someone turns around and gives me statistics that these amnesties work, great. If you're going to pay people for handing in knives, fine if that works. But public perception, it feels pathetic. They need to go out there, they need to increase... How can Keir Starmer set up 24-hour courts, literally do not pass go, straight into prison for hurty words on Facebook, yet we can't come up with something similar for people who are caught with a knife? And we need to, you know, we had idiots like David Lammy who are turning around saying that, you know, stop and search is it doesn't work, it's ineffectual. I think one of his Guardian headlines I saw from a few years ago. Admittedly,
he would argue that he's not an idiot.
Yeah.
Others might say that.
And also, that's an old piece of Guardian broadcasting.
Trying to make is that we need to step up stop and search. We need to come down on if we can come down on people on Facebook and Twitter or whatever for saying something that isn't quite a little bit fruity on Twitter. If we can do it for that, why can't we do it for knife crime? Why can't we just send people straight to prison?
Can I just ask you, have you noticed a difference in the way people are behaving online?
I have noticed it in myself a little bit, but I do refuse to let it affect my posts.
But you don't. You don't post offensive posts.
No, I think this is going to lead to some real change in Westminster by the government into what people can actually do on social media, because some of the stuff, like the man who was, you know, sent to prison for 3 years, I think 2 or 3 years, the other day. You can't have people thinking that this is OK. And it has been a constant thing that people have been told, and they don't seem to listen.
Well, I'm actually glad that there is... I'm glad that they're coming hard on people who are saying ridiculously false things on Twitter. I've been called so many things. I literally look at it and I do laugh and I ignore most of it. And for some of them who send me stupid stuff, I just say, well, I'll take that as a compliment coming from you. You who can't even put your own picture up, you're obviously not going to stand behind your words. But the fact that I should even have to be bothering with that. But I am actually slightly pleased in a way that they are coming down on people who are saying very offensive things, because I don't post offensive things.
No.
I don't have a problem with it.
No.
So they can come down. They're not going to come down on me. I've got nothing to say. But I don't agree with them coming down on people actually expressing a different viewpoint that they don't agree with. That's where, we part ways.
I was giving this some thought on the way up. And to offer a slightly different perspective, I'm not saying this is my view, I'm just saying this is a slightly different perspective. We all agree, I think, that incitement to violence and saying things that some of these people have been punished for, they should be punished and we should come down like people. But to get 3 years in prison, it's the sentences that I find disproportionate. What I think we should be focusing more on is the people that go out committing the actual violence.
No, I would agree with that. I do agree with that, but I don't think we should ignore the damage that these sort of things and posts can do to people. I don't think we should ignore that.
I was just going to say, we should just be careful about what was said in a court, which we don't probably know, in relation to one or other matter like happened to that person. But I think in the principle of this is we can't allow people to think that social media is a free hit. I mean, funnily enough, I get grief, if you want to call it that, and I do exactly the same as you do, and I ignore it. But it's still, you know, why should it happen? Why should I get
I
that
agree
sort
with you,
of stuff?
but let's be honest, right? This is the bit that I was thinking about on the way up. It's wrong. People should be punished for incitement to, I think, you know, whipping up a storm prior to a riot or during a riot. I think we all agree. But for me, it's the people that go out. What I was going to ask you was, if you read a post like that, would you then go out rioting?
Me?
Yeah.
Definitely not. No.
This is what I'm saying.
But I know why you asked the question.
The reason I'm saying that is because do we really honestly believe that people are being animated by social media posts that they're reading and going, right, you know, this woman was 65 years old.
That's got nothing to do with it.
But my point is do we honestly believe that the whipping up of hate on social media should... I'm not, by the way, I'm not disagreeing,
okay,
should
so
be punished.
let's turn it around and let's make it one of these famous so-called celebrities that whips up hate on people and individuals all the time. You know, I would say that as long as, if they're going to do this, it works both ways round. So some of them, when they chuck a Twitter storm at you because they're not happy with something you've done or said, I would say that people who've said offensive things on social media and created a massive storm against you, I would say, and there's many of them in the celebrity world who have done that, who currently have radio shows on certain channels, that should, that I think this should be applied to those people as well. You shouldn't be allowed to whip up hatred towards somebody, but that then you have the point as who determines whether what you've done or what you said is actually hateful. So for me to say that, I say that Imam Khalif, in my view, with XY chromosomes, is a male, but then somebody says that's hateful, that's transphobic.
Exactly, yeah.
Who determines where the line is?
This came up about 18 months ago, didn't it, in Westminster? And I think we all thought there was going to be some changes coming through from the last government, and it hasn't, and it never happened.
Of course,
well,
they didn't do anything.
That's fair enough. So I think that without doubt, I can't remember whether it was in the King's speech or not, but I know that there's been some indication in Labour areas that they would like to see something really positive happening to make sure that this kind of behaviour isn't allowed.
But it's very subjective, isn't it?
It is very subjective.
Because that's the issue. The problem is it's very subjective, because then we end up with two-tier. So if you're on the side where everyone thinks, oh, you're very righteous, as is always the case, often I'm the wrong kind of black. I'm saying things, but you're not supposed to say that. You're black. You can't be saying that. That's the wrong thing. So then there's a bit of storm whipped up against me. But it's OK, because what people are saying is the narrative, and she is the wrong kind of black. So it's that's my concern with all of this.
I think people who whip up a storm, so saying, for example, you know, go out there and get them, lads, or something, during a riot, they should be dealt with. I think the sentences that are coming out are massively disproportionate. They should be... I mean, I don't think anyone argues that there should be... I totally agree these people should be punished in some way, maybe a fine, maybe a couple of months in prison for doing something like that. But if you're physically going out there, throwing rocks at the police, burning down buildings, that's where the sentences should be coming.
Yeah, and they are doing
that. And for whipping up
true.
stuff on social media, I just don't think people are that stupid. Of course there's going to be some people
It's also difficult as well, because everyone can be caught up in something that's misinformation, and that's easy to do. And it's not your fault, necessarily. It's who's put it out there in the first place. But then if they got the wrong information as well... So I think yes, it's right to punish people for not scrutinising information if it then results in something terrible. You have to take your part in it. But I do think as well that if we come back to the machetes and knives, that actually people carrying machetes and knives, it shouldn't be allowed at all. And they shouldn't be given... Do you think they should be given compensation for handing back a machete or knife?
Well, as you said earlier, you know, this is obviously we're picking this up as an ongoing matter. So I can understand why the government is taking this on from the last government. But I hope in proper circumstances over the next year, as we see changes in potential policing and all this sort of matter, that we don't have to see these kind of amnesties. What we want people to do is to stop using knives.
They need to be petrified.
It's very, very simple.
Knife. They need to be very petrified.
So would you put you're talking about sentences. Is this the place where you put a
Absolutely.
This is what I would do.
Absolutely.
It'd be 5 years for being caught with one.
Minimum. Do not pass go, straight to jail, 5 years. So if you get caught with a knife at the point on the street, you know you're going to prison for 5 years.
There's no question, and I would like to see...
Yeah. And
more like it.
We need to increase the sentencing and make a big deal of it. You know, publicise the fact that that you're going to go to prison, and that is, if you can do it for people who are, you know, hurty words on social media, you can do it for knife crime.
Well, and I also would say bring back the death penalty as well for people. Just sort of chuck that in. I'm a captain, and also Lee Harris. Thank you very much. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News Live on TV, online, and on digital radio. On the way, the pulse, as the World Health Organization have declared a fresh outbreak of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox, a global emergency. First, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 4:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Priceless artworks, including a Van Gogh painting, have not been damaged, and all the public are safe after a fire ripped through the roof of the historic Somerset House. London Fire Brigade said 125 firefighters and 20 fire engines were helping to tackle the blaze in central London that broke out in the morning. Smoke was spotted billowing from the roof of the historic building on the Strand just before midday. The venue is now closed and all events this afternoon have been cancelled. The cause of the fire is still unknown. In Scotland, a member of the SNP has been kicked out of the party for comments about the Israel-Hamas war, described as utterly abhorrent. John Mason's been accused of flippantly dismissing the deaths of more than 40,000 Palestinians. Party officials will now meet to discuss a fixed time period of suspension. In Ireland, a teenage boy has appeared in court charged over a stabbing outside Renmore Barracks. Army chaplain Father Paul Murphy posted on social media to say he was doing OK after receiving treatment for serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The 16-year-old boy, who cannot be named because he is a minor, was refused bail and remanded in custody. President Biden admits he's optimistic that a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel could be in sight. Tensions, though, are still high in the Middle East, with an airstrike hitting Lebanon earlier, killing at least 10 people. Israel claims it was targeting a Hezbollah weapons centre. And an infectious disease expert says it's very likely that a new deadlier variant of Mpox, previously known as monkeypox, is already in the UK. The clade 1b strain has been confirmed in Sweden after first being detected in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The new, more transmissible strains caused hundreds of deaths around the world. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Sunny spells and fine weather continuing through this afternoon, but there will be some showers and it will be particularly breezy across the northwest of Scotland. And that's due to this area of low pressure and this squeeze of isobars giving particularly windy and gusty conditions, but further south it's a much quieter picture through the rest of Saturday. So for the southeast, plenty of hazy sunshine around, a couple of showers across western parts and particularly across northwest Scotland there will be showers continuing to feed through as well. Breezy here too with that wind, and over hills it's going to be feeling quite cool. But generally it's going to be a largely dry night, fairly fresh temperatures into the low double figures and maybe into the single figures in a few rural spots as well. So to start the day on Sunday, lots of dry weather around. But further north, there still be showers feeding in. The far northeast of Scotland may see some brighter skies to start off with, but we are going to hold on to these showers moving in from the west. Further south, western parts again seeing some early morning showers, but further east again more in the way of sunshine. Wales, there'll be a couple of showers over the hills, and most of the southeast will be seeing a bright start to the day on Sunday. There will be some clouds continuing to bubble up through the day, but we do see those conditions beginning to settle down. Any of these showers starting to melt away across the southwest and through Wales. And any showers by the afternoon really being restricted to the far north of England and parts of Scotland. And even here, there'll be a little bit fewer and further between than we've seen through today. Still breezy though, and not feeling particularly warm with temperatures at best into the mid-teens across Scotland, but warmer further south and feeling quite pleasant in that sunshine if we get to 25 degrees. Elsewhere, through the rest of Sunday, a largely fine and dry night, most places staying dry, just a couple of showers still feeding into the far northwest. It's all changed though into the start of next week, rain arriving from the west on Monday and staying unsettled as we head through the early part of next week. That's all from me, bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 37 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you just tuned in, where have you been? You're watching GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Next up, health officials have ordered doctors to look out for cases of Mpox as a deadly strain is confirmed to have reached Europe. Now, the World Health Organization, the WHO, declare a global emergency. They've said that the outbreak, which started in Africa, more than 500 people are dead, and the continent so far there were 15,000 cases that have been reported. So the question is this the next pandemic? Well, let's see what GP and medical writer Renee Honderkamp thinks. Dr. Renee.
Hey, Nana.
Renee, oh, it looks horrible. It looks vile.
It does look horrible.
What is it and what are the symptoms?
It's a pox virus, like smallpox, that we managed to eradicate. The symptoms for most people, if they get it, because it's not that easy to catch, are mild. They're headache, fever, chills. You get this rash, which affects, unusually, palms of the hands and feet, which most rashes don't. So that's quite a...
But a lot of them have it on their face.
Oh, they do. But, for example, if you get chicken pox, you wouldn't get it on your palms or your feet. So there are ways that you can differentiate it. I think what I want to do is just calm down the rhetoric a little bit. The World Health Organization did the same before with monkeypox about 2 years ago, and that fizzled itself out because people changed their behaviour. So So Mpox is not that easy to catch. You have to actually be close skin-to-skin contact with somebody who has it, or their clothing or bedding. So it's going to be someone close to...
But can't it be transmitted if you're very close to them as well?
Kissing,
or in the...
Yes.
It can be transmitted to...
So obviously sexual contact is a problem, although it's not classified as a sexually transmitted disease.
I'm going to rule that one out.
Don't kiss anyone.
There's nobody.
But so I think let's calm it down a little bit. It's been endemic in Africa, parts of Africa, for a long, long time. It's just spread outside a little bit right now.
But isn't this a different version?
It's a slightly different, what they call a clade. This is 1B, whereas last time it was 2, which they think is slightly more infectious. But we're not talking about COVID. We're not talking about someone who you could be talking to now and catch it. You know, if you actually look at reports of it, even in households, when somebody is diagnosed with it, they isolate the whole household and the other people don't get it.
But these things have a habit of getting cleverer and cleverer and cleverer and educating themselves, these viruses, on how they can transmit more successfully.
They do.
But I suspect that when they do that, they also work out how they don't kill their host, so they can
so they get slightly less dangerous.
But this one's become more dangerous.
We'd think so, but we don't actually know, because there's a lot of controversy over who dies of this, because in some of the areas where it's now spread to, healthcare is almost non-existent. People are quite sick because they're living in poor conditions. So are those people weakened from an immune point of view? And so things that wouldn't kill you and I would kill them.
Do you not think this was a bit of a Western sort of argument? They're over there, they don't know what they're doing, whereas here, we know what we're doing, so we'll be fine.
So, no, I don't think it's that. I think there is a whole Western thing going on here that we need to keep people very scared about things. I think, look, of course we should be vigilant, and I think people that are at risk. So last time that this rose its head, men who had sex with men were at much more risk. Obviously, sexual contact with somebody who has symptoms of the disease is a worry. If you're immunocompromised or pregnant, well, I don't know. If you're immunocompromised, you know, that might be a problem too. So I think if people are aware of it, as soon as you get a symptom that you're worried about, see a doctor, because it can be swabbed quite easily and tested for.
What's the treatment for it?
So there's no treatment. It's a virus. If you're very ill or you're immunocompromised, you'll get antivirals, perhaps. You know, so it'll be the same as treating any viral disease.
What about the vaccine? Some people might be, because there are 3 apparently different types of vaccine, and lots for it, and a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe I'll just get the vaccine and be done with it.
OK, so I personally would never take a vaccine that I don't need, and I do not feel at risk from Mpox. I don't think I'm going to be mixing with people who have Mpox, and I'm certainly not going to be in risky behaviour with people that have it.
But you might say, sit on the tube. Do you use the tube?
I do.
You might sit on the tube and then your hand on the handrail. Somebody who's had it has put their hand on. Or you might hold onto a rail that somebody's held onto. I mean, and then that's it.
It's not it, because you've then got to put that in your mouth. I don't put my fingers in my mouth when I'm on the tube.
You could rub your eyes.
I really don't. I'm quite careful with my hands. But things like that don't worry me. I feel I have an immune system that will do its job. I think people who are immunosuppressed may be more worried about that. I think for people that need to travel to Africa, for people that are going to travel to Africa and have sex with other people, definitely the vaccine is a consideration. So I think if you think that you're at risk or you're so worried about it is something you want to do, of course you should inquire about the vaccine. I'm all for people taking treatment that they want to take. What I'm not for is telling people.
So at what point in your mind would you say that you would potentially recommend people get vaccinated? Obviously, people take their own personal situation into account, so that's everybody's doing it for themselves and potentially for others. It's your own personal decision.
Absolutely.
But at what point would you say that, OK, this is maybe something that people need to consider getting the vaccine for? What would it take in your...
You mean generically across the whole population?
Yeah. Well, or would there not be a point?
I think that point would be a very, very long way off, because I would always err on you need to assess your own situation and decide whether you want this. And I'm standard on that. And I just don't think this is going to be a pandemic. It's just not the same as an airborne virus. It really isn't.
But it is slightly airborne if you're quite close in close contact.
The evidence is not firm on that. It really isn't. Kissing, yes. So because they're heavy, big respiratory droplets, so they're not airborne because they drop to the floor. They're heavy.
That's why.
So I think it really is unlikely. I think what we need to do is we need to be vigilant. We need to be looking out for anything that worries us, seeing a medical practitioner if we see something that worries us, and it can be quickly ruled out or ruled in. And I think thereafter you take whatever path is recommended.
And give up shaking hands. I'm going back to the elbow. I'm going straight back to the oven. Whoever's touching me.
Listen, I think if you have a condition that means that you're more at risk, of course, and I would always recommend that for anyone. Me personally, I think I'm OK. I've just had shingles, actually.
Oh, God, get out. Get her out. Get her out of here.
You know, I'm fairly relaxed about these things, and I always think I have an immune system that will do its job. If we're well-nourished, we're in the Western world, we're sensible, we should be OK. And last time it was brought to a close because people changed their behaviour, and some of them had the vaccine.
Do we have any conditions of it at the moment? I don't think anyone's reportedly...
No, there is a statement today that it probably is in the UK already. We just don't know about it yet because there's an incubation period, obviously, before we actually see any signs of it. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure we will get cases here, Nana.
Yeah. All right. Well, Renee, I won't let you go just yet. Briefly, what are your thoughts then? Labour are planning to end the 8 a.m. GP appointment dash. Do you think that's a realistic plan?
I think it's a good plan.
Nice idea.
Nice idea, but I don't think it's realistic. I mean, I just don't understand the 8 a.m. dash. I don't understand why some surgeries have it and some don't. These surgeries are run as businesses, so they could organise their day so that they took appointments throughout the day. The GP practice where I'm registered as a patient, I'm not allowed to make an appointment in 3 weeks' time if I want one. I have to do the 8 a.m. dash. In the GP practice where I work, you can book one in 3 weeks' time. So I think there needs to be some guidance to GPs about how they run their businesses. I don't see how Labour are going to end it. What are they going to do? Are they going to give us more receptionists, more doctors, more time?
More money.
More money?
You're giving everybody more money. I think you probably get more money as a GP. I think the GPs are next anyway, or is it border force?
I think everybody's next. I mean, everybody's going to jump on this train. Frankly, I'm quite happy with the money that I get as a GP. I think I'm very lucky. But I can see that everybody will jump on the more money.
They're already doing it now. Dr. Renee Hunderkamp, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Right, well, that was Dr. Renee. So no panic, don't panic over monkeypox. That's her thoughts to you. But if you feel that you need to do something about it, then again, it's a personal choice. But I did ask her, and I'm asking you next, do Labour have a plan to end the 8 a.m. GP appointment scramble? Stay tuned, that's next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty, and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean, up to 90% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And in the last year, there's been 2 tax increases that have equated more to the last 3 years combined. So now, if you're a roll-your-own smoker, a 30-gram pouch of roll-your-own will cost £22.50, but you can buy a counterfeit pack of 50 grams for £3. So there's a massive disparity. A lot of illegal tobacco is imported, but we do also have a problem in the UK with illegal tobacco factories. So in the last month, there's been an illegal tobacco factory in Gateshead, in Bury, busted, producing roll-your-own tobacco. And on the 12th of July this month, West Midlands gang illegal tobacco factory, the gang was found guilty of producing illegal tobacco, and that was more than £5 million lost tax revenue to the government. And actually, all of those people found guilty got a suspended sentence.
And how does that work? They're literally importing container loads of raw tobacco and packaging it up in factories in Britain, and they're using what appears to be British packaging illegally?
Yeah, some of it is branded packaging, so some of it isn't the kind of unbranded packaging we'd see on cigarettes and roll your own now, but it's relatively simple to reproduce, especially RYO. Our own pack swap data now shows that about 50% of the roll your own market is illegal tobacco.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes, she could have saved Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
48 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, will Labour's plan work? That's the one they have to end 8 a.m. GP appointment scrambles. Remember those? We've all done it. At 8 o'clock, you pick up the phone and you start calling, but it's engaged, and then you have to keep going until you get through. Labour's Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has promised to eliminate the rush for medical appointments. Good luck with that one. He's going to allow patients to easily book with their preferred doctor. However, the Doctors Association UK argues that without significantly increasing core funding for GPs, always comes down to money. This promise is unachievable. Now, Labour's plan to take the pressure off GP surgeries by bringing together existing services such as family doctors, district nurses and physiotherapists under one roof, shifting resources to primary care and community services should help to fix the problem. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you think Labour's plan will work to end, and do you think they can actually do that? Do you believe that Labour will be able to end the 8 a.m. GP appointment scramble? Joining me now, political commentator Lee Harris, and also former Labour Minister Ivor Kaplan. I'm going to start with you. Actually, Lee, because I think I did you last time. Lee Harris, so Labour have a plan. They're going to bring all the different facilities sort of together, and Wes Streeting has a plan. Do you think he's on the right track?
Well, something needs to be done. I mean, I'm very lucky. My wife is normally the one on the telephone at ridiculous o'clock in the morning trying to get hold of the doctor. And it's an absolute nightmare. And it seems like forever now that it's been like that, trying to get a GP's appointment. You know, for a country like Great Britain, you'd think we'd be able to get a GP appointment relatively easily. Now, if... I was going to say that I have less sympathy with chucking more money at the NHS, especially with GPs. However, reading into it, where they say that the amount per person that they get from the government for their GPs has stayed exactly the same, except but their costs have gone up. Part of me thinks that they are asking for more money because they're jumping on the bandwagon, because everyone else is asking for more money, and Labour clearly do not do deals, they just capitulate. So there is an argument for that. But the other part of me does think that if that's what it takes, if we can do this new plan, give them a bit more money per head, and if that allows people to be able to get a doctor's appointment without having to get up at ridiculous o'clock in the morning to make these phone calls, and keep your fingers crossed whether you're actually going to get in, because that's the other thing, we've made these phone calls and we've not been able to get an appointment.
Ivor Kaplan.
Yes, I agree on this matter entirely with what Wes Streeting has been saying. I think it's essential that we change the way that the GPs operate. I know that for many of them they are independent companies or whatever, however they call it these days. But the issue is not about the business side of GP work. The issues here are about how people want to deal with their doctors. And I think we need to get a new start for the GPs and for how we're going to go forward, because it's clearly in the last 10 years hasn't worked.
But should they get more money? They want more money for this. I mean, they're paid a lot of money, these GPs, over £140,000 a year. That's quite a lot.
That is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And inevitably, there are whole loads of people in the NHS right now saying, we want some more money, we want some more money. Everybody wants more money. It can't happen. We know it can't happen.
Well, you're saying that, but Labour, unfortunately, Keir Starmer appears to have been dishing out these above-inflation pay rises, so everyone's... Why I would do it.
I'm not sure how, 5% is too far.
But they're above inflation, so that's fine, but they are above...
They want 11%, the GPs.
The GPs want 11%.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, I've got to go to our Great British Voices. This show's nothing without them. Let's welcome them. Brian Dugan from Edinburgh, Jonathan Jones from Cornwall. Jonathan, thank you very much. I got my reishi tea in the end. It took me a while. I haven't tried it yet. It's probably trying to kill me there. I wouldn't blame him. So I'll start with you.
You won't need an appointment with that tea, Nana. And actually, the 8 o'clock is peak time for putting the kettle on and having a cup of tea in the morning. So I'm really sensitive to this. But look, I wish them well. If they've gone out, listened to the electorate, and if that's what everyone told them, that they want to get, tighten up on that 8 o'clock appointment thing, which is a bit bonkers, then good luck to them. But if it's just tinkering around the edges, then I'm not sure it's going to work.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Jonathan Jones. Love the tea. I haven't got a mug, but Lee has. Right. Let's go to you. Brian Dugan, 8 a.m, this mad scramble. What are your thoughts? Do you think Labour can crack it?
Well, I hope that they're able to do something, Nana, because it is a mad scramble, as you say. It's actually a bit of a lottery. It's really not. It's very unedifying. It's not really what should be happening at this day and age in terms of trying to secure an appointment. I mean, this is really important for people. I think something has to be done, and I hope that they can change this system fundamentally, because it's just not working at the moment.
It's a bit of a joke, isn't it? Brian Dugan, thank you very much. And also, my brilliant friend there with his reishi tea, thank you very much. Jonathan Jones at Cornwall. Those were the Great British Voices. What are your voices? Difficult conversations on the way next. Josh Howie will be joining me. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Sunny spells and fine weather continuing through this afternoon, but there will be some showers and it will be particularly breezy across the northwest of Scotland. And that's due to this area of low pressure and this squeeze of isobars giving particularly windy and gusty conditions, but further south it's a much quieter picture through the rest of Saturday. So for the southeast, plenty of hazy sunshine around, a couple of showers across western parts, and particularly across northwest Scotland there will be showers continuing to feed through as well. Breezy here too with that wind, and over hills it's going to be feeling quite cool. But generally it's going to be a largely dry night, fairly fresh temperatures into the low double figures, and then maybe into the single figures in a few rural spots as well. So to start the day on Sunday, lots of dry weather around. But further north, there still will be showers feeding in. The far northeast of Scotland may see some brighter skies to start off with, but we are going to hold on to these showers moving in from the west. Further south, western parts, again, seeing some early morning showers, but further east, again, more in the way of sunshine. Wales, there'll be a couple of showers over the hills, and most of the southeast will be seeing a bright start to the day on Sunday. There will be some clouds continuing to bubble up through the day, but we do see those conditions beginning to settle down. Any of these showers starting to melt away across the southwest and through Wales. And any showers by the afternoon really being restricted to the far north of England and parts of Scotland. And even here, there'll be a little bit fewer and further between than we've seen through today. Still breezy though, and not feeling particularly warm, with temperatures at best into the mid-teens across Scotland, but warmer further south and feeling quite pleasant in that sunshine if we get to 25 degrees. Elsewhere, through the rest of Sunday, a largely fine and dry night. Most places staying dry, just a couple of showers still feeding into the far northwest. It's all changed though into the start of next week. Rain arriving from the west on Monday and staying unsettled as we head through the early part of next week. That's all from me. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours, but time is ticking. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes, she could have said stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 5 o'clock. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines just after 5 o'clock. Priceless artworks, including a Van Gogh painting, have not been damaged and all the public is safe after a fire ripped through the roof of the historic Somerset House. London Fire Brigade said 125 firefighters and 20 fire engines were helping to tackle the blaze in central London after it broke out this morning. Smoke was spotted billowing from the roof of the historic building on the Strand just before midday. The venue is now closed and all events this afternoon have been cancelled. The cause of the fire is still unknown. In Scotland, a member of the SNP has been kicked out of the party for comments about the Israel-Hamas war described as utterly abhorrent. John Mason's been accused of flippantly dismissing the deaths of more than 40,000 Palestinians. Party officials will now meet to discuss a fixed time period of suspension. Greater Manchester Police have launched a murder investigation after a man who became trapped in a burning building died in hospital. Officers were called to a fire on Dumbarton Green in Wigan early on Wednesday morning. It's being treated as a suspected arson attack. Police across the country are on high alert today as protests and counter-protests take place nationwide. It follows the arrest of 460 people so far linked to violent disorder earlier this month, with hundreds now facing court. Tensions are expected to be high in Birmingham, with the group Stand Up to Racism also taking to the streets. Meanwhile, our reporter Ray Addison has been speaking to protesters in Dover.
Calling me a racist and they're calling me a fascist and a Nazi. I'm just British. In my country, holding my Union Jack. looking out for my children and grandchildren, whom I've got 3 of.
I love my country, and I want our future, you know, our kids to have something have something, you know. When they grow up, you know, I don't want them to inherit something that's, you know, it'll be dangerous for them in the future. They'll have no facilities to use, you know, they don't get a doctor's appointment.
I've come down here just really so I can actually see what the reaction is. There must be 50 police here now protecting 4 of us. It's because they want to attack us, and yet we're the ones that are being called the aggressors. We're the ones that are being called the fascists and the racists.
In Ireland, a teenage boy has appeared in court charged over a stabbing outside Renmore Barracks. Army chaplain Father Paul Murphy posted on social media to say he was doing OK after receiving treatment for serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The 16-year-old boy, who cannot be named because he's a minor, was refused bail and remanded in custody. A private funeral for one of the 3 young girls stabbed to death in Southport has been held today. 6-year-old BB King was attacked during a dance class at the end of last month. The killing sparked anti-immigration and counter-protests across the UK, in part because of misinformation about the suspect. The government is being warned it will have to increase funding to meet its pledge to end the so-called 8 a.m. scramble for GP appointments. The Doctors' Association claims at least £35 more per patient per year is needed to match the funding levels from a decade ago. During the election campaign, Labour said it would make it easier to book appointments. In Gaza, it's reported at least 18 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike. Hours earlier, President Joe Biden had claimed he was optimistic a ceasefire deal with Hamas was closer than it's ever been. Following negotiations with mediators in Qatar, Joe Biden told reporters there are just a couple of issues standing in the way of an agreement which could lead to hostages being freed.
I'm optimistic, not far from over. Just a couple more issues, I think we got a shot.
And anyone travelling to an African country affected by a new strain of Mpox is being told to get vaccinated. Fresh advice has been issued by the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control after the virus emerged in the Congo. More than 500 people have died on the continent so far this year. Sweden's recorded its first case, while Pakistan's trying to establish whether a person there is affected. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
5 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is political commentator Lee Harris and also former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. Still to come, a theatre has cancelled an upcoming performance by comedian Reginald D. Hunter after reports that Israeli audience members were heckled during his Edinburgh Fringe performance. I'll be joined by Josh Howie in the studio very soon to discuss what on earth happened there. Then police forces across the UK have been on standby today amid reports of protests along with planned gatherings by campaign groups, including Stand Up to Racism. We'll have a report from Dover and Birmingham. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has Sir Keir Starmer lost control of the unions? The Conservatives are hit back at the Prime Minister. Finally, you mean they're doing something? They stopped internalising. Why did it go wrong? Why? Because of exactly that. The Prime Minister, anyway, they hit back at the Prime Minister, stating that he got played by the unions, paymasters, in offers to train drivers and junior doctors. But what do you think? Has Starmer lost control? Send me your thoughts. Post your comments at gbnews.com/you're safe. So police forces have been on high alert amid planned protests and gatherings across the UK. And all of this, as new data reveals, 460 people have been arrested in connection with the violent disorder earlier this month. Hundreds face their day in court. Our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson sent us this.
Well, here in Birmingham today, there's been this stand-up to racism counter-protest. There had been rumours of an anti-immigration protest in this city. That's why West Midlands Police said that they were going to deliver the resources onto the streets to reassure the public and also be there ready to respond to any protests that did develop. There were a few hundred people that gathered for the stand-up to racism protest here in the city today. Chants of anti racism and making sure that the people that were around here and listening to those protests knew what their message was. They talked about Nigel Farage, the rise of the far right, saying that they wanted them off the streets, wanted bigots out of Brum. That was one of the banners that was paraded, and a placard that was walked around the protest here. Ultimately, it was very peaceful, but the police here were on hand, police liaison officers, as well as officers engaging with members of the public and the protesters as well. They put out a statement, West Midlands Police, yesterday, saying that they didn't want to be anti-protest, but that they were anti-crime. They had criticism in the past few weeks for how they'd responded to protests that we'd seen across this city, and of course the violent disorder that we've seen across the country. Many people and the government particularly thinking and hoping that the certain speed of the sentences that we've seen of people that have been involved in the violent disorder over the past few weeks, they'll be keen to see that is seem to act as a deterrent because of no anti-immigration protests reported in big numbers across the country today, certainly. So they'll be hoping that acts as a deterrent. So far, we've seen a lot of people sentenced to custodial sentences for violent disorder. That carries a sentence of up towards 5 years. And yesterday, the first person charged with rioting. Now, that is a much more serious offence. It can carry up to 10 years in prison. The person charged with that was a 15-year-old boy from Sunderland. So they'll be hoping that this new phase that we heard from the CPS last week, this new phase of arrests being made, this new phase of people being charged will put an end to the violent disorder that we've seen over the past few weeks. But the stand-up to racism protest here in Birmingham was largely peaceful.
Carson with his report in Birmingham. So anti-immigration protests and counter-protests took place in Dover earlier today. Our reporter Ray Addison sent us this report.
An anti-immigration protest had been scheduled to take place today here in Dover, down by the seafront. The poster for that saying that it was time to stand up and be counted against the, quote, illegal invasion of our country. So in response to that, we saw an event organised by Kent Stand Up to Racism at the Market Square here in Dover Town Centre. Behind me, around 60, 70 people turned up, waving a number of Palestinian flags, a number of people wearing masks, the type you might associate with Antifa and those kind of similar organisations, and they were chanting that there should be no borders across the whole of the world and that everyone should be welcome here in the UK. I actually spoke to a gentleman called Aram Rof. He came to the United Kingdom in 1999 in the back of a lorry from Iraq, and he told me why he'd come down here today.
Some people have been very welcoming. In the beginning when I arrived, they even tried to teach me Cockney words. I wasn't able to put two English sentences together, but I was going around telling people kushti or saying lovely jubbly.
And you built a life here?
I built a life in here, and I'm from that positivity. But there were also people actually threatened to cut my head off. There were people also told me many times, go back to your own country. Even now, people, when I speak up to tell people my experience or how sometimes a terminology is going across in a wrong way, they tell me you're a guest in our country. Well, I'm not a guest. I'm a proud British person and I'm proud of the British values.
So after the protest had taken place here, it finished around midday, a smaller group of around 20 younger people, more sort of hardline people, you might say, they seemed determined to try and find somebody to go and protest to. And so they actually headed down to the seafront, to the site of the original planned protest, which had never happened. And they did manage to find around 4 or 5 people with Union flags, with the English flag, and they surrounded them. And the police had to sort of step in and block their access to them. They were chanting, they were calling them fascists and telling them that they were not welcome here in Dover. I spoke to those people with the flags, and this is what they had to say.
They're calling me a racist and they're calling me a fascist and a Nazi. I'm just British. In my country, holding my Union Jack, looking out for my children and grandchildren, whom I've got 3 of.
There must be 50 police here now protecting 4 of us. It's because they want to attack us, and yet we're the ones that are being called the aggressors. We're the ones that are being called the fascists and the racists, and we're anything but. Far right. I mean, what is far right today? You know, you're either far left or you're far right. There's no middle ground anymore.
So perhaps best summed up by that gentleman there who said that, you know, it's quite polarising. You're either considered far left or far right. However, down here in Dover, this big planned event that the police were very concerned could become quite difficult just seemed to not really materialise and kind of fizzled out into nothing.
That was Ray Addison in Dover earlier today. Well, joining me now, my panel, political commentator Lee Harris, and also former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. So a lot of these protesters and anti-immigration protesters who are, they were saying that they felt like they're being vilified for daring to point out that they're not happy with the situation, when that is a view held by the majority of people in this country in terms of the mass immigration.
Is it mass immigration, though? Is it really?
I mean, it is. Well, the net figure was over 700,000, and then you've got the people in the boats as well. So that's legal and illegal.
I think that's the point. We need to find out, you know, what's legal and what isn't legal, because this is how it all used to happen like that pre-Brexit. That's one of the points that has been affecting both the government before and still the government, the new government today.
What do you mean by that?
Because when there was freedom to move, then freedom to movement from up to 2020 meant that it just happened as a normal thing. I mean, for instance, we still have this situation today where youngsters who want to study could go anywhere they liked in the 28 countries or 30 countries. They can still do that, but it's much more difficult.
Well, they can still do it, though. I mean,
it's much more difficult.
When you say much more difficult, you may need to fill in a form. Is that bad?
It's not that bad.
It's not that difficult.
But the point being is you can't just go without having it all approved and having a way to do this. And that's the bit that's not working.
No, but you still, if you're going to study in another country, you still would have had to fill in forms and do things. You couldn't just go and join the Spanish university and blah, blah, blah. And you still have to pay money and things like that. You couldn't do that anyway.
But you could go to Spain.
Well, I can go to Spain. I went to Portugal a little while ago.
Very nice.
Exactly. Well, I just don't... I think there's a lot of very wealthy people, mostly, saying, oh, I have to get a visa now. And that's only if you stay for a certain period of time. So it's not
it's 90 days, isn't it?
Yeah, 90 days. That's 3 months. Who goes to any of these countries for 3 months, unless you're going to study, in which case, get a visa?
No, but it's not 3 months.
Oh, 90
days.
It's 90
days add up inside the 12 months.
Yeah, you can renew it.
But you can renew it as well. It's not like it's a big...
I want to talk about these... protesters who are being labelled as far right, because I don't think they get enough of a good outing on programmes like they do on this programme, as I'm about to do it. But I think the reason that people are out protesting is because there's been almost 2 decades, probably slightly more than 2 decades, of policy failure from successive governments on mass uncontrolled migration and the consistent inability for governments to stop the boats. And there are lots of just ordinary Brits out there who are concerned about immigration, and they are being instantly labelled as far right. And I just think it's absolutely... it's done to shut down debate. And at some point, people are going to get angry over time. Now, personally, and I think everyone would agree with this, nobody would condone any of the rioting that we've seen. In fact, I think we should separate those people completely. I don't think they represent the views of ordinary
It's because a lot of them are opportunists anyway, and when the young one was arrested, he didn't know what far-right meant. So, you know, it's just... And also, if you wanted to start labelling, then you could label the pro-Palestinian protests far left. But nobody's bothering, are they, with that?
But what's not happening is they're you know, poll after poll, election after election, the people in this country have voted to reduce and control immigration. And election after election, our politicians, they've not just ignored them, they've deliberately lied to them. And I just keep feeling that at some point something has got to give. And to label ordinary Brits as far right, which, to be fair, the Labour Party have been doing for years. I mean, I actually...
Well, that's not true,
no,
Lee. I'm sorry.
I'll
that's
give you
not
an example.
True. Look, you can have the...
All right, that's an example, seeing as you're... But
Angela Rayner...
not everyone.
No, I know, but it was just one example. There are loads, but one of the ones that sticks out of mind is prior to Brexit, Andrew Marr asked Angela Rayner about what Labour's... are they a pro-open border party? First thing that she said is we're going to do it nicely and we're not going to be talking about far-right issues, etc. It's just done to shut down debate because Labour have not got the answers. They do not know what to do. They don't want to talk about it.
Very briefly, you've got about 10 seconds on that.
I can't accept that at all. I don't think that's true. Look, the Labour Party is, I can't think, 6 weeks into
look
the
at
election.
what's happened in all that time.
I know they've done an amazing number of things
not a
already.
simple answer.
I've just given you an answer.
Which is what?
Well, I think I don't think that you need to keep going on about far right as though that's something that you're interested. I mean, it just doesn't seem right.
Well, no, that I agree with. It's not right to label people far right or.
But I don't think Labour has labelled people.
Oh, they absolutely have.
Keir Starmer
it's a
did
common
sort of
left-wing
blame
argument.
far right with regard to the protest, didn't he? And a lot of them were just opportunists.
A lot of it is opportunist. And certainly the ones that I've seen, the protests that we saw in that 2 weeks ago, you know, I've seen some of those, and they are different. And the better thing in some of the demonstrations has been where the local public actually, and I think this happened in Bristol too, that they actually then take over the situation and they pushed effectively those people who thought they were being a demonstrator were pushed into a much smaller group.
Final word, Lee, then I've got to go.
People have had legitimate concerns about immigration for a very, very long time, and if they're not getting told shut down, if they're not getting shut down by being called names for wanting to talk about it, they go to the ballot box and then they're ignored there too. So there is a sense of despair.
They're not ignored. How is someone ignored?
I'll tell you how they're ignored.
Very briefly, Keir Starmer has failed to take the subject on head on. He hasn't really.
And the
said what he's gonna do about
Conservatives.
it. Well, Conservatives failed, full stop.
Failed.
Well, I was about to say, what did Sunak ever do?
Well,
exactly.
We're not going backwards, we're going forwards, though. And we're talking right now with regard to these riots. I mean, Sunak is somewhere in a five-star somewhere enjoying himself in LA. And as for the rest of the Conservative Party, they're internalising, oh, why did it go wrong? Why? Right, stay with us. Thank you very much. Either Kaplan or Lee Harris. Next, difficult conversations, which I'm struggling to say. Josh Howie will be joining me in the studio following a theatre cancelling of Reginald D. Hunter. Stay tuned. It's all about Israel. Do not go anywhere.
I want to hear.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joined now by the founder of Quintet London, Tamta Masulishvili, who channels her experience and fervour for fashion into her innovative brands which produce artworks on silk. You brought in some lovely things which we'll discuss in just a moment. Tell me a little bit about the complexity of printing an artist's idea onto silk. Is that a difficult thing to do?
It's actually very simple because we just simply ask our clients a set of questions to find out what they like, their experiences, their favorite objects or anything they desire. We create out of this information preliminary sketch, show it to clients until it's perfect. We change it according to their needs.
Are you saying that everything that you're doing here is personalised to a client? It's a commission from a client?
Every single piece is totally unique. We make each individual piece for the client taste. So every single piece is totally different. And what is nice, for example, we do like wedding favors, corporate gifts, investors' gifts, and every single time we would match the theme throughout to the actual company theme and so on.
Now here we have a series of little silk ties. Am I right to call them ties?
This one's actually called twillies. Tweely.
I didn't know the word Tweely.
Yes.
These have a name. So this is the name of your client in this case. This one is Amanda, I think.
Exactly. So actually, these are our signature design. So if you want to give someone something quickly, but just simply add their names, you can order from our website, and you just simply need to insert their name, and we can produce it on your favorite color combination. But then, obviously, our main product is totally unique pieces which are bespoke.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? I'm matching this sofa. Do I look naked? Sorry, I'm being silly. 23 minutes after 5 o'clock, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time for this week's Difficult Conversations. A theatre has axed an upcoming performance by comedian Reginald D. Hunter following an incident that saw 2 Israeli audience members reportedly heckled out of his Edinburgh Fringe show. Now, Hunter was reported to have made a joke comparing Israel to an abusive partner. He was then heard telling 2 Israeli audience members to leave after they heckled him, saying it was not funny. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by comedian and GB News presenter Josh Howie.
Hello.
Josh, right. Well,
Look at this on this side of the...
What kind of happened? What more detail can you give us? Because it sounds a bit odd.
It's one of those... OK, let's go back in time. I've known Reg a long time, by the way, and before we got on up into this. The joke I'd actually heard about a few months ago. Friends of mine had been to see him do a gig in London, and they were very upset afterwards by this particular joke, which, as you said, compares Israel to a domestic abuser.
Yeah.
And they were upset about it, but that's comedy.
It's meant to be a joke.
It's meant to be a joke. I would argue it's not exactly edgy telling a joke that Israel is the bad guy to a bunch of far-left bigots at an arts festival. I would say that's
You think they're far-left bigots?
Well, I think that some of them certainly are, because the response of what happened when an Israeli couple who were in the front said that, all they said was, that's not funny. And then people immediately started abusing, shouting, as we got a mic issue here, keep it going. No, keep it going. So people started shouting, abusing them, and basically calling them, swearing at them, and also saying that they were baby killers and that they
were committing genocide. This is just a normal Israeli couple, basically. And my issue isn't necessarily with the initial joke. I disagree with it. I find it offensive. But then comedy is in the eye of the beholder. My issue is with the response that happened afterwards, where you had this whole room full of people screaming abuse at this Israeli couple. It turns out one of them was disabled. That's why they're in the front row. Maybe that's got nothing to do with anything. But
that may be harder for them to get out of the...
Well, exactly. Then they and really Reg's reaction whilst that was all going on, whilst people are screaming, they're not baby killers. They're not committing genocide.
What did he do? What was his...
Well, he egged them on. He certainly didn't stop this abuse. And then when they finally managed to make it out of the theatre, he then doubled down with an anti-Semitic joke. So my point would be that if it had nothing to do with Jews, if this was just about Israel, a political joke about Israel, then why then is he then following it up with an anti-Semitic joke about how Jews are stingy, which is what he did.
Is that what he did? Oh.
And then, since then, he's unfortunately doubled down online. He has form. He's joked. There was a joke he did about 10 years ago about the Holocaust. I've done a joke about the Holocaust, but the way that he followed it up, again, arguably, is anti-Semitic. And the stuff that he's been posting online today and the last 24 hours is it's beyond offensive.
Look, I don't agree with the sort of things that are being said in terms of anti-Semitism. I don't necessarily find people being anti-Semitic funny in any way, shape or form, even if it is meant to be comedy. I kind of have certain lines, and racism and anything that sort of feels like it's falling into that category, I sort of don't find funny. But you could argue, as a comedian, this is what comedians do. They come up with stuff like that, and then they double down. You don't suddenly go, oh, I'm really sorry about my joke that was meant to be funny. But that's what comedians do.
I've been there, I've been on stage, I've joked about everything under the sun, and I'm not arguing about his right to be able to say this stuff. But at the same time, I have the right, as a Jew, to call out what I see as anti-Semitic behaviour.
But then how come you... Where is your line, then? Where is your line? I think everyone has a different line.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So everybody has to have... You're right, and it is an individual line. If I've done a joke... I did a show in Edinburgh a few years ago about AIDS, right? Now, there might have been people there who were offended. Now, the joke was not really... The joke was on me. And my hypochondria, but there were people certainly who came there, seeing the title, seeing it provocative, and came to be offended. A few of them heckled me. I think they got what the show was actually about as they watched it. But the point is that people's response, taking offence at that, if the audience had suddenly ganged up on them and started being maybe homophobic and abusive, at that point you step in and go, no, the joke is now broken down and I have responsibility here to these paying customers to stop racist or homophobic or whatever type of abuse. So there is a line there.
How frightening for those poor people to have to then escape this awful mob.
Yeah, well, that's...
People who are sort of ganging up against them and going...
And those people who did it, I imagine, feel that they are righteous, anti-racist, not prejudiced people, but they think that just shouting at Jews, to swearing at them to get out, swearing at them, calling them baby killers, that has somehow acceptable behaviour. It's not.
Hashtag be kind.
Well, no, of course, that's all it's really about, is just the hypocrisy. Yeah. Which way is it? It's like, do we allow this kind of stuff? Then that's absolutely fine. Then everybody should have total freedom to be able to talk about whatever it is and not be offensive. But the rest of the comedy circuit, no one's defending Jerry Sadowitz and his right to be offensive. So it's like the comedy circuit picks and chooses who it wants, is really according to their political beliefs at the time.
So where are we now?
Well, it's sad because I've just spent all week arguing with lots of friends or former friends. Actually, wait a minute, I'm making it about me. No, it's not about me. It's about... it's an interesting debate. And Reg, unfortunately, he's been cancelled. One of his gigs has been cancelled. That's up to every different theatre. I would argue there's...
on the other side, though, isn't he on the supposedly righteous lot? Well... Feel that, so if people crossed over now and are supporting Jewish people, or it just seems very odd, all this.
Well, we live in complicated times. That's why we need a channel like this to be able to try and talk this stuff through. And I'm not saying that I'm 100% right, that I know everything by any means, but let's have a conversation about all this. Of course, even coming on the channel suddenly makes you evil to those people, to those comics. I mean, I spent the last weekend arguing online with about 100 comedians who were all saying that all the comics who come on this channel started the riots that happened the week before. I mean, so this is what we're talking about.
Not true, is it?
Well, no, of course not. But we're talking about an industry, a supposed self-policing, right-on industry that actually is full to the brim of hypocrites, and Reg is just the latest one.
Well, listen, it's been really good to talk to you, Josh Howie. Interesting. Very difficult conversation, that one, isn't it? What will Reginald D. Hunter do next? It'll be interesting to see. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, just coming up to 31 minutes after 5 o'clock. Still to come. Will Labour's plan work to end the GP appointment scramble? We did discuss that. We've spoken to the panel about that. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom at 5:30. Priceless artworks, including a Van Gogh painting, have not been damaged and all the public is safe. That's after a fire ripped through the roof of the historic Somerset House. London Fire Brigade said 125 firefighters and 20 fire engines were helping to tackle the blaze in central London. Smoke was spotted billowing from the roof of the historic building on the Strand just before midday today. The venue is now closed and all events this afternoon have been cancelled. The cause of the fire is still unknown. In Scotland, a member of the SNP has been kicked out of the party for comments about the Israel-Hamas war, described as utterly abhorrent. John Mason's been accused of flippantly dismissing the deaths of more than 40,000 Palestinians. Party officials will now meet to discuss a fixed time period of suspension. In Ireland, a teenage boy has appeared in court charged over a stabbing outside Renmore Barracks. Army chaplain Father Paul Murphy posted on social media to say he was doing OK after receiving treatment for serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The 16-year-old boy, who cannot be named because he's a minor, was refused bail and remanded in custody. President Biden admits he's optimistic that a ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel could be in sight. Tensions, though, are still high in the Middle East, with an airstrike hitting Lebanon earlier, killing at least 10 people. Israel claims it was targeting a Hezbollah weapons centre. And an infectious disease expert says it's very likely that a new deadlier variant of Mpox, previously known as monkeypox, is already in the UK. The clade 1b strain has been confirmed in Sweden after first being detected in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The new, more transmissible strains caused hundreds of deaths around the world. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Sunny spells and fine weather continuing through this afternoon, but there will be some showers and it will be particularly breezy across the northwest of Scotland. And that's due to this area of low pressure and this squeeze of isobars giving particularly windy and gusty conditions, but further south it's a much quieter picture through the rest of Saturday. So for the southeast, plenty of hazy sunshine around, a couple of showers across western parts and particularly across northwest Scotland there will be showers continuing to feed through as well. Breezy here too with that wind, and over hills it's going to be feeling quite cool. But generally it's going to be a largely dry night, fairly fresh temperatures into the low double figures and maybe into the single figures in a few rural spots as well. So to start the day on Sunday, lots of dry weather around. But further north, there still will be showers feeding in. The far northeast of Scotland may see some brighter skies to start off with, but we are going to hold on to these showers moving in from the west. Further south, western parts, again, seeing some early morning showers, but further east, again, more in the way of sunshine. Wales, there'll be a couple of showers over the hills, and most of the southeast will be seeing a bright start to the day on Sunday. There will be some clouds continuing to bubble up through the day, but we do see those conditions beginning to settle down. Any of these showers starting to melt away across the southwest and through Wales. And any showers by the afternoon really being restricted to the far north of England and parts of Scotland. And even here, there'll be a little bit fewer and further between than we've seen through today. Still breezy though, and not feeling particularly warm with temperatures at best into the mid-teens across Scotland, but warmer further south and feeling quite pleasant in that sunshine if we get to 25 degrees. Elsewhere through the rest of Sunday, a largely fine and dry night, most places staying dry, just a couple of showers still feeding into the far northwest. It's all changed though into the start of next week, rain arriving from the west on Monday and staying unsettled as we head through the early part of next week. That's all from me, bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
"36 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's near the end of the show, but don't worry. 21 minutes to go. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. This is GB News. And for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, has Sir Keir Starmer lost control of the unions? Rail unions announced new strikes just 48 hours after being offered a substantial pay rise. Yes, many are calling Labour's close ties to unions undermining, and the PM's authority is on the line. Well, militant ASLEF union is planning walkouts every weekend now from the August 31st to the November the 10th. And this move comes despite a pay offer that would boost the average driver's salary by 14.25%, up from about £60,000 to £69,000. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has Sir Keir lost control of the unions? Well, joining me now is political commentator Lee Harris and former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. Ivor, it's one of your people. We're going to start with you. The unions, Labour, they're all at it. I mean, I read next it's Border Force. They're on their way to start striking as well.
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen all these. But what I can say is a lot of this is hangover. There were a whole set of changes needed to the situations of various people in the public services. And that wasn't happening under the last government. And therefore, Labour has picked that up and has changed it. And some of this has been really good. I mean, the 3-year agreement on the rail service is a good way forward. There have been some other stuff in relation to the health service. We touched on this earlier about the GPs and how you can make this work. I've absolutely 100% do not think that Keir Starmer is just doing this because he thinks that, that's the thing he should do. He knows that these are settlements that have been around for the best part of 18 months in some circumstances and have led to strikes.
Yeah, but they're not buying it. But they're not buying it. Ivor, they're not buying it.
Hold on, that's two different things. No, but there are two different things here.
Say. They're not buying into it, are they? First of all, we've had ASLEF now, after hearing a bumper pay rise, they're now talking about a load of strikes, and they're actually...
But that's a different part of the organisation.
Yeah, but the problem is, though, it feels like it started some sort of ricochet, and now everybody's asking for more money when they see that somebody else is getting more money. I mean, where does it end?
Well, there is a limit as to what you can pay, and that's already been set out by Rachel in terms of where what she's been saying in terms of where we are politically and, of course, economically. These are really, really important issues. But those two matters are not the same matter. There are two different groups.
OK, so
there.
I'm just reading this from
strangely, the Daily Mail didn't quite get it right. I mean, who would know that sort of thing on a Saturday morning? Yeah,
but the point is that the point they are making, if we just forget the fact that they are two separate things, let's just forget the fact that they're two slightly different angles. And I think the point they're making is that literally everyone is seeing what has been given in one hand, and then they are now deciding that it's our turn. Where does it end now? Where does it end, Lee Harris?
Well, I think you're exactly right to point out that once you give one part of the public sector pay rise, the rest of it, and we're seeing that play out right now. They're all going to go on strike. What bothers me about what we've seen recently is this is taxpayers' money. The job of the government is to get the best deal possible for the taxpayer. And what made me laugh is the Transport Secretary, is it Louise... I can't remember her name, Louise Hay or something?
Hay, yeah.
She made out that she'd done this incredible negotiation with them. They did nothing of the sort. They just walked in and just capitulated. They didn't have to do any service improvements. They didn't have to get rid of these ridiculous working practices they have. Like, if they use a microwave or something, they can go and get checked out or take time off to go and see a doctor. If they start their lunch break and the boss says hello to them, they can start the clock again on their lunch break. I mean, these are antiquated. I have a tiny... I'm not going to pretend that I know all about this, but I have a tiny little bit of knowledge about what it's like to work in the rail freight industry. I used to work in the rail freight industry many moons ago, and it is a militant mindset. Lovely people down there, don't get me wrong. It's a very family-orientated place. But they work to the book. They don't know what it's like in the real world, genuinely. And I don't think the public have as much sympathy. So, for example, I do agree that there's lots of areas in the public sector where pay rises are needed. And I'm not saying that train drivers don't deserve a pay rise, but they do get a lot of money.
The pay rises
a lot of money.
The pay rises
4-day week, 35 hours.
The pay rises are needed because what has happened over the last 10 to 12 or 14 years...
Inflation.
There is inflation. But more importantly, what the Tories did was to keep public services.
They're protecting public money.
At a terrible, terrible way. And what has happened
But why are they not... OK, so that's all very well, but why are they not accepting modernisation? They don't want to allow modernisation. They want to keep all the old rules that are ridiculous. That's one of the deals. And also, the Labour Party got rid of minimum service levels. That's pretty much the first thing they did. So it doesn't really sound like they're serving the public. It feels like they are at hot with
But this is the public. This is the public.
But why would a Labour government get rid of minimum service levels? If people want to strike, you can strike, but they should still keep the service to a level. Why would the Labour Party back that? Why would they support that?
I don't know what that is, and I don't know how that has worked itself into a range
that was what they did at the beginning.
Of different things.
Yeah, so the minimum service level for, say, the NHS and the railways and everything else like that was set by the Conservatives to make sure that if they do have a strike, they can't literally hold us to ransom.
Yeah.
The Labour Party removed that immediately.
Right, but that has been in... I'm not surprised that was done. I didn't realise that had happened so quickly, because I think that was actually shared in a previous time by Labour, saying that they wouldn't support that when it was brought forward in government times, in the last government times, if I vaguely remember.
I'm not sure. All I know is that that's one of the things they're scrapping, or they've scrapped. And why would you do that? I mean, that is to protect the public from exactly this. And exactly as you would predict, as soon as you start dishing out money, 5% here, 11% there, suddenly everyone's after it.
You have to have some of the issues that allow people to actually now use the public, have the public services in the right way. And that includes having pay rises. I mean, some of the pay has not been coming.
No, but
health,
they have had...
Let's just look at
the
health.
Reality is...
In health, there isn't...
But the reality is that those in the private sector don't get this every annual guaranteed pay rise. These organisations have pay review bodies that go through the government, and then they work out a pay rise, and then that's initiated. So there is an intermediary that actually deals with a lot of this, in particular for the health service. So you would expect that... But there isn't anything like that for private. If you work in a private business, there's no pay review body that makes sure you get a rise in line with inflation. Even everybody's been affected by this.
Yeah, and it's Mick Lynch is already sort of sniffing his way into a new deal because he wants the same deal that ASLEF have got. You've got the East Coast Main Line, the LNER or whatever they're called. They're now going on strike.
But that's
the Border Force going on strike.
They
all want a piece of it. They all want a piece of it.
Civil servants.
Look, I've got no problem with Labour going in there and trying to get a deal for the same reasons as everyone. It also affects the economy. You know, to have the trains not working properly. But the fact that they went in there and they didn't do a negotiation, they just capitulated. That's partly, I think, the reason why we're getting more strikes coming in, because they know how easy it is to get what they want from this government. So in answer to the question, yes, Keir Starmer has lost control.
No, absolutely not. 100%, that's not true. How you bring about change in the public services is a longer term than 6 weeks. And I really do think that you can't just look at something and say, oh, that's wrong, and therefore this is wrong. And I just have to say that I think in the 6 weeks, 7 weeks since the general election, the party has done an amazing job. Keir Starmer has been first class, especially in dealing with the riots and things that he obviously knew about. But, you know, look, you're entitled to different views.
OK, well, listen, apparently Ira says that Keir Starmer's done well, and Lee Harris disagrees. What do you think? GBNews.com/your say. But next it's time for my quick-fire quiz, a chance for the panel to fight over the stories that caught their eye this week. Stay tuned, that's on the way.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
You'll relate to this one. We've all been there, haven't we? Tensions high in the car as you head off on the latest adventure or holiday during the summer break.
Now, with the average family set to spend about 3.5 hours a week together in the car driving on the roads during the holidays, new research has shown that our relationships could be tested to the limit.
Yes, figures show that 21% are having arguments for simple things like the driver going the wrong way, which we were saying is not actually very simple. That's very serious.
I was going to say that. I'm surprised it's just 21%. Yeah. So if I was going the wrong way down the road,
you'd know about
it. You'd hear from me.
A further 20% squabbling over how their partner drives, yes, and 25% admitting to being more prone to rowing when their kids are misbehaving. It's a lot to deal with, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Well, we're joined now by dating and relationship coach and author Persia Lawson. Good to see you this morning, Persia. What is it about being in a car that just makes things so tense?
Well, I think it's probably quite obvious, isn't it? It's the fact that we are in a confined space, we can't go anywhere, and it can just really create so much tension and stress, especially if you and your other half or a family member, whoever you're in the car with, are going through a little bit of a tricky time. And if it's really hot outside, that doesn't help either. So inevitably, it creates a lot of irritation and bickering, I would say, from my experience.
And what is it about children? If you add children into the mix, it just makes things very, very difficult, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Kicking the back seat and just squabbles, kicking the siblings. So adding children into the mix is just going to turn the heat up on that tension.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said, Storm, you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's time for the quick fire quiz, the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories that are hitting the headlines right now. Joining me, political commentator Lee Harris. Your buzzer, please, Lee. And also former Labour Defence Minister Ivor Kaplan. Your buzzer, please, Ivor. And please play along at home. I'd like to hear what you think. Right, so question 1. Which Tory leadership hopeful said that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was being played by his unions? What were union paymasters? Was it Mel Stride? Was it B, Priti Patel, or was it James Cleverly?
I'm going to vote for C.
You said it's James Cleverly? Say who it is.
Mel Stride.
Mel Stride. Did you talk before you pressed the buzzer or buzz before you pressed?
I can't remember.
Is there a
simultaneously?
Right, let me see. The answer is it's James Cleverly.
Oh, well done.
Not so cleverly, James. I bet he hears that all the time. Yeah, it was, in fact, James Cleverly who made that comment. And what do you think? Is he right? Do you think that Keir Starmer is being played by the unions? A lot of us think he is. Closest answer wins. OK, so it's question 2. How many viewers, stroke listeners, did Elon Musk and Donald Trump interview? Or did the interview get?
1.3 million.
1.3 million, yeah.
That was the live number.
I'm wondering what the hell people were doing, to be honest. But nevertheless, I'd go at about 1 million people, wasn't it?
1 million people, you're saying. The answer is 1 billion people, actually.
Oh,
1 billion.
That was the whole amount.
Well, that's what I asked.
1 billion.
Sorry, I thought it was just the stated one.
1 billion? No,
yeah, it was 1 billion.
Closest answer wins. You still win because you got 1.3 million. Closest answer wins. Well done. There's 1-1. 1-1. Did you get it at home? Question 3. Which famous reality TV couple broke up this week?
No idea.
Oh, I know. It's
come on, Lee.
Fury and whatever her name is, and I'm really sorry I don't know, but that's the couple.
I'm afraid I can't give you that. You say anything.
Is that Fury the boxer?
Yeah, it's
and someone else.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know her name, but I know it's Fury.
All right, so the answer is social media influencers Molly May and Tommy Fury. They ended their relationship, apparently, according to... You don't get anything for that.
What?
It's 1-1, nada.
Outrageous.
They got it at home, they always do. They would have known that. All right, true or false, Theresa May has been announced in the new Strictly Come Dancing lineup. True or false? Ivor Kaplan.
False.
Press your buzzer. You've only got another option.
False.
No, don't do that.
Oh, true then.
It's too late. I can only take your first answer. It is, in fact, false. But if you ever get true or false, it's between two people and one says false. You say true just in case. Don't ever say the same thing. Otherwise,
She's never done this before.
I did think it might be because of her dancing clip. You know, she did.
Oh, my God, yes. She can't go on for that.
Oh, yeah, she can't.
She couldn't do that. She couldn't do that.
Widders did, though, didn't she?
Premier League. Final question, question 5.
Yeah.
Premier League football returned last night as Manchester United beat Fulham 1-0. But who scored the only goal? Was it A, Marcus Rashford, B, Joshua Zirkzee, or C, Jadon Sancho? Ivor.
The answer is B.
Joshua
I saw that last night, strangely.
Zirkzee.
And Brighton won 3-0 today, so, you know, I'm happy.
C.
Jadon Sancho. The answer is Joshua Zirkzee. Well done. First time, giving a round of applause. Yay! Very good. Well done to you. Lots of you've been in touch with your views. Janet says that I think that Starmer has been abysmal.
Correct.
Christine says fully costed Nana, non-doms. Well, that's what they said. I don't know. Yes, I remember that. Fully costed Nana, non-doms. Well, that's what they said. This is about how they're going to spend the money. And then, somebody says, Philip says, sack the sound engineer. So no, we haven't got one, actually. Let's see. And finally... Oh, no, somebody's called you a name, they won't do that.
Yeah.
And then Gary says, the guy on the right is right. The people are frustrated that nothing has been done about excessive immigration. Nobody hears us. Thank you very much for your comments. GBNews.com/you'll say they're so clever. Right, so on today's show, we've been asking... What's the question we've been asking? There we go. Do you believe there is a two-tier policing approach to protests? According to our Twitter poll, 95% of you say yes, 5% of you say no. I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel. Thank you so much to Ivor Kaplan. Ivor, thank you very much for joining me.
Nana.
And also the brilliant Lee Harris. Lee Harris, thank you very much. Lee Harris used to be a great British voice. Listen to him now. He's still a great British voice, but he's on TV, he's online and on digital radio, like us on GB News. Well, listen, there is loads more still to come. Don't forget, you can download the GB News app, check out all the programmes for free, or why not check us out on YouTube. Next up, it's a Saturday 5. I'll leave you with the weather forecast. See you tomorrow, 3 o'clock.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Sunny spells and fine weather continuing through this afternoon, but there will be some showers and it will be particularly breezy across the northwest of Scotland. And that's due to this area of low pressure and this squeeze of isobars giving particularly windy and gusty conditions, but further south it's a much quieter picture through the rest of Saturday. So for the southeast, plenty of hazy sunshine around, a couple of showers across western parts and particularly across northwest Scotland there will be showers continuing to feed through as well. Breezy here too with that wind, and over hills it's going to be feeling quite cool. But generally it's going to be a largely dry night, fairly fresh temperatures into the low double figures and maybe into the single figures in a few rural spots as well. So to start the day on Sunday, lots of dry weather around. But further north, there still be showers feeding in. The far northeast of Scotland may see some brighter skies to start off with, but we are going to hold on to these showers moving in from the west. Further south, western parts again seeing some early morning showers, but further east again more in the way of sunshine. Wales, there'll be a couple of showers over the hills, and most of the southeast will be seeing a bright start to the day on Sunday. There will be some clouds continuing to bubble up through the day, but we do see those conditions beginning to settle down. Any of these showers starting to melt away across the southwest and through Wales. And any showers by the afternoon really being restricted to the far north of England and parts of Scotland. And even here, there'll be a little bit fewer and further between than we've seen through today. Still breezy though, and not feeling particularly warm with temperatures at best into the mid-teens across Scotland, but warmer further south and feeling quite pleasant in that sunshine if we get to 25 degrees. Elsewhere, through the rest of Sunday, a largely fine and dry night. Most places staying dry, just a couple of showers still feeding into the far northwest. It's all changed though into the start of next week. Rain arriving from the west on Monday and staying unsettled as we head through the early part of next week. That's all from me. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GBNews Great British giveaway. It didn't cost much to enter, but of course if you're not in, you can't win. And here I am, having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.